Hello, dudes. What's going on? How's everybody doing? I'm sitting here in a very dark room, as you can see, with my less than optimum webcam, but it will do. It will do. It's a decent webcam, but I normally got my more high quality camera, which is currently behind me because of lighting and cables and a few changes I'm making. So you just have to bear with me with this more rudimentary setup that I have at the moment. How is everybody doing? 4DV, shout out to you. Fabrice, say these guys are actually regulars on the King Mono show channel. Yeah, so shout out to you joining me here on the King's Monologue. Sometimes it feels like those two audiences never the twain shall meet, but it's nice to have the people that cross over. So shout out to you. What's good, Derek? How you doing? Oh, cool. This is your first time live on the channel. You're in for I hope you're in for a good time. We are going to talk about the Odyssey. Okay. I don't want I'm not gonna be obsessive about the Odyssey. But in saying that, I have to be totally honest, and I have to say that I'm actually quite grateful for the massive racist overreaction against the Odyssey from the usual low IQ suspects who just want to, grift and rage bait and profit from that rage bait. We should be coming to the understanding now that the most profitable audience to service is middle America, far white racists. They are violent, they are easy to incite, and they are incredibly generous. And this is why you have so many people, even black people, doing the anti-black grift, because there is checks to be paid. There's checks at the end of it. If you've not got a soul and you're willing to sell out, hey, you can make some money and be an officer Tatum. Or if you're add to that, if you're incredibly low IQ like Jesse Lee Peterson, someone who can barely string a sentence together, someone who basically talks at this pace. Yeah, that's how Jesse Lee Peterson talks, but he's got the audience of a genius. In terms of his following, you'd think the guy was a scholar, you'd think the guy was a PhD, and he's clearly someone who wouldn't have succeeded in any other area of life had he not decided that he was going to be the most vile anti-black racist that there was. So yeah, there's money to be made is the bottom line. So a big hoo-ha has been made out of the Odyssey. For obvious reasons. We know it's because they put Lupita Nyong'o in not just a starring role, but they casted her as Helena of Troy, and the idea of a dark-skinned black woman being called beautiful makes them incredibly angry, because it really flies in the face of all of the hard work they've been doing to convince everybody that not only is the Indo-European race superior, but they are also the most attractive by default, objectively beautiful. So the idea of anyone but them being cast, let alone the polar opposite phenotypically in their view, black is the opposite of white, obviously. So the polar opposite phenotypically being cast as beautiful is something that they were always going to violently oppose, and violently oppose it they did. But I'm grateful they did that. Going back onto my original point as I'm rambling, I'm grateful they did that because it made me look at Greek literature. It made me look at Greek law. It made me look at some of these, more famous tales, and also maybe just look at the classics. It's not an area that I specialize in or even pretend to be an expert in, but diving into the classics and diving into literature, learning and being armed with all of this extra information, because I always knew/suspected, knew, but in a rudimentary way, that there was a link between ancient Kemet and the founding of Greece, and the fact that the Greeks inherited so much and stole so much from the ancient Egyptians. I always knew that on a rudimentary level, but knowing that now on a quite intrinsic level, and actually seeing the the plethora, I mean, there's just so much evidence to support the fact that the ancient Greeks literally, really venerated ancient Kemet and actually venerated Africa as a whole, not just Kemet, but Ethiopia, which was, literally the old word for inner Africa. They worshipped these people. They placed them on a pedestal. Their gods were from there, or many of their most important gods were from there. And having that all being laid bare has been excellent. It's been really excellent. So this is a thank you to the far right grifters, of which we are going to have to stomach now because we've got to watch a Piers Morgan interview, unfortunately, where he decided he was going to get far right grifters on his channel so that he could critique the Odyssey. And this is very much in form for Piers Morgan. This is what he normally does. So just like I called the live stream, I think I put on the thumbnail something like back to form or back to old ways. I can't remember exactly how I phrased it, but this is typical. This is the Piers Morgan I'm used to. He's a vile human being. So it's nice that he's not giving us that gray area anymore. I like it when he doesn't give us gray area because he does confuse me sometimes. Sometimes when he plays, he straddles this fence. And I'm like, hey, do I like you now? What's going on? I feel like I don't hate you, and I'm not used to that because being from the UK, you just hate Piers Morgan if you have any morality, if you've got any, if you have any upstanding human, if you're in any ways a decent human being, you will, you'll find Piers Morgan vile. So when he does these things and you're kind of like, hey, am I okay with this guy? That's incredibly confusing. It's like, hey, you're ruining my myopia here, Piers. Yeah, go back to being the wad that you are, that we all know you to be. And so he's returned to form. So thank you, Piers, because now I don't need to be confused by that either. Now I can dislike you like I normally do, and we can also talk about the Odyssey and these critiques. So anyway, preamble out of the way. I saw the Odyssey today. I watched it. Hi everybody who's joining. I watched the Odyssey today, so I wanted to go and see it. And I'll be interested for people who say, I think 4DV was first in there to say that he watched it. I watched it. I was quite proud of myself. Watched it this afternoon. Didn't really have much on a plate. Had a nice little 3-hour window that didn't have anything booked and stuff. I'm gonna go and watch the Odyssey. I'm gonna see what's like. I was intrigued, obviously, to see how big Lupita's role would be and if it works. And okay, so before we start the Piers Morgan interview, let me give you my feedback on the Odyssey. Let me give you my honest feedback on the Odyssey. And I know lots of people have different views. I think it's been getting critical acclaim from the general public, maybe not from like professional critics, but I think the general feedback has been quite positive. Now, I've watched it and I hated it. I'm not gonna lie. I absolutely hated it. I thought it was just, I didn't feel invested in any of the characters, and I just hated it from start to finish. And I think this is just me being honest now. This is film critic hat on, by the way, guys. So we're not getting into the history, the law, the politics, the etymology of terms, all of that good and juicy stuff. We'll get into that when we watch Piers, but this is just me giving you a very layman's, non-professional perspective on the movie without ruining it. So I'm not going to give you any spoilers. But my issue with the movie was that it was just how a lot of Christopher Nolan movies have gone recently. So let me do a quick poll, actually, quick poll. For those of you who are here, how many of you got 56? Okay, so that's a decent-ish audience. How many of you have seen Tenet? Okay, so this is what we're going to do. I want you to give me a 1 if you've seen Tenet, a 2 if you haven't seen it. If you give me a 1, I want you to then give me a space and then give me a rating out of 5 for Tenet. 1 being the lowest rating and 5 being the highest. Okay, so if you've watched Tenet, give me a 1 if you've watched it, and then a rating out of 5 afterwards. So 1 dash rating out of 5, or 1 space rating out of 5. Okay, so 2 if you haven't watched it, 1 if you've watched. So Tenet is a Christopher Nolan movie. Okay, and I'm about to give you my feedback, and it's based loosely on the notion of Tenet. So a lot of people haven't watched it. Okay, cool. I'll tell you what I think of that decision shortly. Let me just get a few of these votes in. Okay. True, you can still give me a rating. Even if you couldn't watch it, just be honest and give me a rating. Okay, Lincoln is up on he's up on Tenet. He likes Tenet. Shout out to Lincoln. Loads of people haven't watched it. And get loads of no's. Okay, that's interesting. I thought most people would have watched it because it kind of came out in an interesting time. I feel like it was post lockdown, and it was a time when movies were just coming back out again. So it was like if you want to go to the cinema, that was the option. I feel like are my timelines incorrect in that assumption? I could be wrong. I don't know. I remember I did watch it with my son, and my brother brought his son, so we kind of did a little family visit. Okay, I think that's the last vote. We've got a bit of a yeah, that's it. So I think most people have voted now. So there's not many people who've watched it. Okay, cool. So if you've watched Tenet, yeah, just know that you're gonna go to watch the Odyssey, and you're gonna know that you're in a film by the same filmmaker. Okay, you're just gonna know you're gonna. I hated Tenet, by the way, to be clear. Okay, so those of you who have given twos, you can if you want to, but I would advise you not to waste your time. That's my total honesty. Yeah, like True Pilgrim. Yeah, it is a very hard watch, and it's not a hard watch because it lacks action. It's got loads of action. It's not a hard watch because it lacks dialogue. It's got loads of dialogue. It's a hard watch because it's just like zero investment in the characters. Like there's epic music and not epic stuff is going on. Okay, so it's kind of like, yeah, that's Denzel's son who's in that. You're correct, Jonathan. Epic music when epic stuff is not happening. That's like that's like Christopher Nolan's signature. It's like all these people, they're like, oh, have you Inception? A lot of people love Inception. It's a lot of people's favorite movie, and I'm like, I don't get it. What? This movie's so average. Yeah, but I don't hate Inception, by the way. If it's on, okay, I might glance at a scene. I won't go, oh, Inception's on. I need to kind of sit down. I give Inception like a 3 out of 5. Okay. But Inception rides that whole wave of like characters, once again, you're not invested in, epic music when non-epic stuff is going on, convoluted storytelling, and it's just meh. You know, just meh. So like, I'm gonna be honest with you, Nolan fans who like Tenet, and they are out there. There are people out there who love Tenet. Okay, Lincoln likes Tenet, and I'm not gonna mock you for that. That's your choice. There are people out there who like Tenet. So Nolan fans and people who like that kind of storytelling, they'll like it. They'll go, hey, this is a good movie. There is also the possibility that people who love the story of the Odyssey might like this movie as well. So going back to the Odyssey, if you like the story of the Odyssey, you might like it because you've had all of these visualizations in your mind of how the Odyssey plays out. So in my mind, I didn't like it. I didn't feel invested. It was just a boring. It was boring not because it lacked action. There was loads and loads of action. It was just boring because, hey, look, I'm sitting here for the last kind of like hour of the movie. So it's 3 hour stretch. And for the last hour of the movie, I kept saying, should I walk out? Should I walk out? Should I walk out? And it's not because I was like, there weren't stuff happening. It was just like, this is like pointless. It's like, everything just was like, this is not, this isn't how, it wasn't tied together into a nice story. So let me give you a nice little juxtaposition to this, okay? I liked Troy, okay? And the only thing I've critiqued Troy on, obviously, is the way they've, the casting, which is obviously they've done the same again, by the way, with the casting. Lots of very Northern European looking pinkish people seem to make up the Hellenes, and that's what they do. And this is why they're so enraged, by the way, because they've been kidding themselves with using Hollywood to fool themselves that all of the people in that region weren't a brownish color, which is what makes perfect sense and what actually, before they tamper, what we see depicted. But anyway, let's assume that all of these people are pink people. I liked Troy. Yeah, I did like Troy. I thought Troy was good, because Troy told a really clear and clean story. Troy was, it's just really just typical kind of like epic war cinema. There's a couple of scenes in Troy, yeah, where that I absolutely love. Like love, love, love. Like there's epic. Here's what makes an epic film. This is just for me. Yeah. This is just for me. Here's what makes an epic film. There has to be a few quotes and one-liners in there that I just keep that come to mind as soon as I finish watching the movie. And Troy has a ton load of like epic lines that just ring in your mind afterwards. Like loads. It's such a good movie for that. Second thing, it has to have scenes that I'm really invested in. And in Troy, even till now, I'll watch the movie knowing it's going to happen. And when Achilles has his fight with Hector and Hector gets killed, everything about that scene is just perfect. I'm emotionally invested. I'm upset that Hector dies. I actually feel for his wife, and she's like, she can't watch it. She's sitting behind the wall and she knows what's about to happen to her husband. It's so good. It's like peak. Like, I'm not saying it's a fantastic movie, by the way. A lot of people like trash it, but it has got some scenes in it that are just so good, and you feel like, so yes, So that to me, that's like good storytelling. Yeah. I can enjoy the movie. It's got a beginning, a middle, and an end. It's executed really well. I'm invested. I hate Achilles, but I'm rooting for him. I like Hector. I'm upset to see him die. I don't want to see Troy fall. It falls. I'm weirdly satisfied when Achilles gets killed, but also a bit sad because he was kind of the both the protagonist and the antagonist, and it's just all done really well. That's really good cinema for me. Yeah, that's really good cinema, and that's a really good movie. That's a movie that when I watched it, I did go to the cinema to watch it back in the day. When I watched it, I was like, damn, this is a good film. This is good. I wasn't expecting it to be good, but I was like, damn, this is a good film. And this movie that I watched, this Odyssey that I watched, just didn't have any of that. I just wasn't bought in. Maybe I don't know. Maybe I was gonna say maybe I'll watch it again and I'll like it, but I don't think I will, because I've tried Tenet again many times, hasn't got any better. I've tried Inception, that's gotten worse on rewatches. And I just realized, actually, when it comes to Christopher Nolan, he hasn't really impressed me since the Dark Knight trilogy. And even the third one was really ropey. The Dark Knight Rises, that was at the end. No, the Dark Knight. What's the third one called? So the first one's Batman something. The second one's the Dark Knight, and the third one's the Dark Knight Rises. I think that's right. But the third one, whatever, even that one got really ropey towards the end. So, I just realized today that Christopher Nolan might just be riding a wave of people's high expectations for him and just like delivering really mediocre movies. But hey, that's my opinion, man. That's my opinion. Okay. So there you go. Anyway, so that's my opinion out of the way. I wanted you guys to know I've watched the movie. Let's get to Lupita Nyong'o. Okay, let's get to Lupita. I'm trying to give you all of this, guy, by the way, without ruining the movie. I know a lot of you want to go and watch it, so I'm not going to give you the spoilers. Lupita Nyong'o's role was she right for the casting of Helen of Troy? Yeah, she was spot on. It was really good casting. If you watch it with open and honest eyes, you can see what they're trying to do. There, with Lupita Nyong'o, she stands out like a sore thumb amongst the cast. Okay, she stands out completely, and I think that was the point. She was supposed to be viewed as exotic, and she was supposed to be. There was an objectification of her darkness, contrasted with all of the rest of the cast. Okay, so it was this idea of this objectified beauty. Okay, it wasn't necessarily complementary, and it wouldn't have done what it needed to if they had just cast someone white to look like the rest of the cast. So they knew what they were doing there. And if you watch the movie, her beauty doesn't matter. And I know that's going to sound crazy, but you have to watch it to understand what I'm saying. They removed the necessity of her beauty from the role because of the role that she plays. It's a small role, But she plays two characters, by the way, without going into too much. It's a small role, but it's also a pivotal role in her casting. So it was really good casting. It was really good casting, and it worked for the film. If people weren't going crazy and being stupid, right, it's just like something that's so meh to the storyline, that in terms of like how this person looks is so unimportant. And this is where we're going to come on to the video we're about to watch, the Piers Morgan interview, because the overblowing of the race of Helen of Troy is, I think if people are honest and they go back and watch it now, hopefully they should come out and say, hey, we've just made a big deal out of something that was so ineffectual in the end. You know, a lot of Odyssey lovers are going to love the movie, not like me, I hated it. But then also people who just watch it and who aren't Odyssey lovers are going to watch it, and they're going to all agree. The one thing you can't disagree with is across the board, this movie was cast really well. There was no bad performances. It was done really well. The other, the person who's, there's a transsexual person in. So I don't know if I'm using the correct terminology there. Sorry if I've got that wrong. It does change quite a lot, so please accept my apology. But there's a someone who's changed sex. I can't remember that actress's name, who changed to she's now he. And he's really good in his role, like really good, very good. Perfect casting once again. So all of these people that they cast were cast really well, man. It was a good movie for casting. It was a terrible movie in that it's Christopher Nolan. You know, it was just a Christopher Nolan blah fest, in my opinion. Kind of like, ooh, epic music. Ooh, am I supposed to be moved because you just introduced some trumpets in the background? This scene is not moving me in the slightest. If you liked, if you're kind of like into Clash of the Time, if this movie, yeah, let me give you that. This movie feels like it's 50 years too late. It feels like it belongs in that Clash of the Titan era. You know, like Jason and the Argonauts, Clash of the Titan. What's the other ones? There's a few of those movies, I think Cruel and all these other ones. Those movies and that era of movie making, this is where that movie belongs. Back in the day, you know, those movies that we watched where even I felt more invested in their characters than I did to this one, to be totally honest with you. But it feels like it belongs in that era. But anyway, let's start the video now, because yeah, well, the casting of Lupita Nyong'o was correct. I'm just gonna leave it at that. It was correct, and I think just like Science and Inspiration says, they're not going to backtrack on this. They're going to say they were right to kick up a fuss, but if you watch the movie, you'll just realize, yeah, this works. You know, this whole thing works. Okay, so that's it. But my rating, let me give you a rating out, a Rotten Tomatoes rating out of 100 for this movie. It's 100 or 10, I can't remember. I'll give you my rating, and I'd give it a 5 out of 10. I'd give it a 5 out of 10, which is much higher than Tenet, which I give a 2 out of 10. 2. So it's higher than Tenet, but it's just, yeah, he doesn't do it for me, Christopher Nolan. So it's not a great movie. You'll be able to sit through the 3 hours, I'll tell you that. Like, even though I was wanting to walk out between after 2 hours, I was kind of like, should I leave? It wasn't because, oh, this is unbearable, I can't sit through it. It's just kind of like, well, look, stuff's happening on the screen and people are fighting and this is thingy, but I just really don't care how this movie ends. That's literally where I was. I was like, I just really don't care how this movie ends. I'm not rooting for anyone in this tale. That's it. I wasn't rooted for anyone, so I didn't care how the movie ended. That's what it was. It was like, am I supposed to? And it just felt like this is an epic poem, and that's maybe what it should have been left as. It maybe should have just been left as an epic mythical poem that isn't work. It doesn't work for movie. You know, it just didn't work. That's kind of how I feel. Let's start because I've been rambling for long enough. So I'm gonna pop what do you call it? Don't throw up, guys. I feel like throwing up every time I see this jackass. This is a Critical Drinker, who is a very British R word. Yeah, that's what I'm gonna call him. He really is a horrible human being. He's Scottish, And he just doesn't have any he doesn't have any conscience. That's my honest truth. Yeah, he doesn't have a conscience. He doesn't have any integrity as a human being. He's just found a grift for himself, and he's right. He's the YouTube movie critic equivalent of Chud the Builder. You know what I mean? Like that's what this individual is. So, critical drinker. Many of you would have heard of him. He has an incredibly large following, and he makes a lot of money basically critiquing every single movie that has a woman or a black person in it. And that's it. If there's a woman or a black person and they're doing anything other than being a slave or being a wife, he's gonna have a problem with it, because he is of that ilk of these idiots. That's what he is. So anyway, let's get on with it, because I wanted to watch through this interview where Piers Morgan thought it would be a good idea to have these horrible human beings talking about the Odyssey. Now, this was out 3 days ago, so I think before the release, but now the Odyssey has been released, there's a bit of retrospect to this, and we can have a bit of a discussion. So let's get going. I'm going to click play, guys. You know the usual. If you can hear it loud and clear, just give me a 1 in the chat so I know that's all good, and I'll let it continue playing.
The Odyssey is this epic fantasy story, but it's fantasy grounded in the real world. It's set within a very specific geographical location and time.
It partakes of a trend that we have seen in recent years to sort of, let's call it, de-heroize Odysseus.
The reason I smirked was because there's a long history in Hollywood of white people playing characters that should be black people. I mean, Charlton Heston as Moses was kind of wild.
We're trying to challenge traditional beliefs. Well, that's something Christopher Nolan doesn't usually do. This is a game he doesn't usually play.
To make this national epic, which the Greek people feel is a continuous tradition from the 7th, 8th century, and not have a single Greek, is kind of jarring when you go out of your way to get other people who would cause controversy, and sometimes in a subversive manner.
So it's quite funny there. You guys might have noticed from that little summary at the start, the only person, and this is very typical of the world right now. I was about to say of online media, but this is kind of just like the world that black people inhabit. We're always by ourselves, alone, as the voice of reason against a sea. It's kind of like we live in this kind of like Trumpian world, yeah, where for all intents and purposes, a lot of America and a lot of Europe, people of Indo-European descent are literally descending into insanity when it comes to their R word. Okay, they are literally descending into insanity. They're offended by everything. They're angry about everything. They're committing the most heinous crimes against people. Burning houses, unaliving children regularly now in America, police and general public. They're just doing a litany of vile things against us, and when it comes to resistance against what they're doing, we're always alone. We're always the lone voice of kind of like, hey, this was wrong that happened to us. It's like Palestine has the whole world acknowledging how horrible what is happening to them is. I'm not saying that's doing some big deal. It's still happening, regardless of the world being, but the world is on their side. The world can kind of like look in agreement and say what's happening here to these people is wrong. When it comes to us, however, the world is in agreement that they're going to be completely silent, or they're going to quietly support what's going on against us. They can do it to our children. They can do it to our adults. It doesn't matter what they do. We're always by ourselves. This is what we talked about when the term black fatigue was coined in its truest form, before these devils co-opted it. When that term was coined, this is what we are describing, that fatigue of it's always us by ourselves fighting against the most heinous human beings. And even the people in their society who classify themselves as good people do nothing. They do nothing. They say, oh, we're good. Oh, we're not all like that. We're liberal, we're this, that. But it's like, but do you help? Are you trying to stop? Do you speak out? You don't do anything. You do nothing. So you quietly support everything that you see. So I just noted that on the panel you had 4 white men arguing against, and only one black man who's probably, he's not an expert, not a classicist, but in fairness, none of them are, maybe apart from one of them. And he's the only one that's kind of saying, hey, could you stop making a big deal out of something so small? And it's typical.
Better for your business model if this is a massive turkey or a massive hit? With the notable exception of Top Gun Maverick, there's no longer such a thing as an epic blockbuster with no strings attached. Christopher Nolan's The Odyssey, based on Homer's sprawling poem, is one of the biggest and most anticipated movies of the year. It's therefore no surprise that its release this week has been marred by furious debate about its historical accuracy, its colorblind casting, and its reputedly feminist undertones.
So that was loaded there. Okay, so first of all, historical accuracy, it's a myth. Okay, and people really pushing, right? Oh well, these places existed. Yes, many myths are cast in earth, and many myths are actually based on, on kind of reality, kind of real events that took place, but it's a myth. And if you watch the movie, once again, retrospect is a wonderful thing, which I have now, you'll realize this movie is making no effort, not even a single iota of effort to be, to resemble a human experience. Troy did. So even Troy, in the way they made Brad Pitt's Achilles human but skillful, they kind of almost drew out the kind of the magic from the tale and made it more about him just being an exceptional, to the point where you forgot the fact that this man was a demigod. They haven't done that in this. Christopher Nolan's really leaned into the fact that this is just a mythical world. So historical accuracy is not important, and it never was important. If you once again, if any of these idiots had read the Odyssey, they'd know that, Helen of Troy born from an egg. Yeah, we're not going for, in case some of them don't know, we are not born from eggs as human beings. Well, anyway, that's an aside. And what was the second thing he said there? So he said historical accuracy, the casting of women. I think he said try to be a feminist. Like, if you watch the movie, it's just so not that. So these nothing burger arguments are going to come back and fly in their face. But anyway, let's carry on.
Critics say it's Snow White on steroids, a beloved classic shattered by the woke wrecking ball of demonic Hollywood. This time they argue.
The woke wrecking ball of demonic Hollywood. So Piers Morgan, by the way, this jackass has a book called Woke is Dead. And this is the kind of racial insensitivity he has, because he thinks he's just being current. And this is why I despise the man. I despise him on every level, because the word woke is actually, I find it to this day incredibly offensive, because just like the phrase black fatigue, it's a phrase they co-opted from black people. It's a phrase that was used amongst black people. Yeah, it was a phrase that they coined. Yeah, we coined to talk about our experience, someone progressing from a state of not being enlightened to being awake, to being woke about what's taking place on this earth. And these demons took this word and they threw it at us. And he's got a book literally called Woke is Dead. Like, who the hell do you think you are to name your book after a word that you've taken from the black community to use as a slur? I hate him. Yeah, and this is why, because he does things like that, and then he's using it, and he just feels like he's just been given the pass. Oh, I'm Piers Morgan, I'm cool. It's like, no, you're a sad, lonely, disliked middle-aged man who ran to America because you were so disliked in the UK, and now you're edging your way back in, but you've still got those same sentiments. If you saw how this vile POS treated Meghan Markle, you'd understand he has no humanity. But anyway, let me carry on before I rant too much.
It's gone too far. The victims of the alleged woke washing are not merely fictional dwarf helpers, but the characters of a foundational text in the grand sweep of Western civilization.
Okay, Homer's works are not and never were written to be foundational texts for Western civilization. Western civilization is a term that you guys made up, okay? In the 19th century, you literally made it up. The Greeks did not belong to the West. They did not see themselves as Westerners, And they certainly did not align themselves with people who looked like you, Piers Morgan, Northern European people of Germanic descent. They thought you were barbarians, okay? They aligned themselves with the other groups around the Mediterranean, those brown and black people. That's who they aligned themselves with. That's who they saw themselves as. So you can whiteify or attempt to whiteify the ancient Greeks as much as you like. But I keep telling people, the ancient Greeks were never white like modern white people. They were never that. They were never that. They did not see themselves as that. They did not align themselves with that. They looked down upon those people. They in fact despised them. Those people were existed but weren't reading and writing like the populations of Africa were. The Ethiopians were reading and writing. The ancient Egyptians were reading and writing. The people of the Levant were reading and writing. The people of Northern Europe were illiterate, barbaric. Yeah, there's a huge space between you and them. And for you to take Homer's text, Homer who saw Zeus as an Ethiopian, yeah, Homer who saw Zeus as an Ethiopian, Homer who coined the term Zeus Ethiops, and it was used on the island of Chios where Homer was from. They called Zeus Ethiops. Homer who saw Zeus, who wrote in his epics that Zeus traveled to dine with the Ethiopians, okay? And in addition to that, Homer, who out of his 8 epic novels that he wrote, or big, large poems, whatever you want to call them, we only have 2, but we know that one of them was called the Ethiopians. This is a man who literally, really looked up to the Ethiopians. And you're going to sit there and talk about, the novels are foundational to Western civilization, when no one asked you to make them foundational and glaze them and glaze this society and this civilization of people who look down upon you. No one asked you to do that. You made it foundational, but you think it doesn't make your worship of these texts doesn't suddenly relate you to these people. I'm sorry, but that's just the fact of the matter.
But are they missing the point? Isn't Hollywood's role to reflect the changing world around us?
Oh, on that note as well, I have to give a shout out. Shaw Black did a video recently on the origin and possible ethnicity of Homer being an African. And it's incredibly well supported. In fact, the ancient Greeks who wrote about Homer, many of them believed he was born in Africa. Okay, that's the belief. The belief was that Homer himself was an African. Now, don't find it, don't be surprised that you don't know of this. I obviously had no idea. Like I said, I'm not like a massive classicist, but I had no idea until I watched Shaw Black's video. And I was astounded by the amount of historical literary support there is for the idea that Homer himself was an African. Now, doesn't that funny how none of them will be privy to that very important detail? And one of the things you have to understand about Western academia, Western scholarship, which obviously Piers is a subject of, is that they are masters at ignoring what is not convenient to the tale they're trying to push. The propaganda they're trying to push, it's not like the refutations don't exist, but they are masters at pretending it doesn't exist and making debates about things that were clearly black and white. Now, do you think, let me just throw this question out there, guys. Do you think if they had a single piece of textual support, contemporaneous textual support that said Homer was a Dorian, and you had like a whole litany of Greek scholars who agreed, yes, he was definitely from Northern Europe, if they had that in writing, do you not think that the whole world would believe that Homer was from Northern Europe now? The answer is, well, you guys can answer that. I'm not going to put words in your mouth. But it's funny how we have, scores of texts saying that Homer was an African, and yet, that can't be confirmed. That can be neither confirmed nor denied. Let's not propagate stuff that doesn't, we haven't got support for here. Like Homer was a Greek, and that's the end of it. Like this is the double standards that we deal with with these people. Let me carry on.
And not simply parrot the legends of ancient history. We have not one but two epic panels to debate this, beginning with the classics. Well, Daniel Mendelsohn is a scholar, critic, and best-selling author of an Odyssey, a father, a son, and an epic. His translation of Homer's poem was published this spring in paperback. Aon Wilson is a novelist, biographer, and journalist, also the father of Emily Wilson, whose feminist translation of the Odyssey is said to be the basis of Christopher Nolan's new movie. But first,
notice how he called it a feminist translation. This has already been debunked, by the way, and hopefully we'll get it debunked in this video. Guys, I'm going to be transparent over here. I haven't watched this video at all. I've seen little snippets of it because someone else who I like at the Birdman's already reacted to it. So I thought I'd like to react to it as well since it was relevant and I've watched the movie now. But yeah, feminist translation. Notice how he threw that one in there. And I already know, because I know this discussion about Emily Wilson's translation has been going on for a while now. Many well-schooled people in the text will make it clear it's not a feminist translation at all. It's just an translation that tries to be true to the text and just removes essentially what were misogynistic elements that were added in translations done by men, white men, obviously, who tried to make it fit their worldview. And she's just kind of like put it back in there. It's like, nope, that person was homo, we're making him homo again. That person was a woman, we're making them a woman again. And for that, it's been called a feminist translation. You know, that's how these people do it.
First, let's talk to the historian and senior fellow at the Hoover Institute, Victor Davis Hanson. Victor, great to see you. Great to have you back on Uncensored. What's your beef with the Odyssey?
It's kind of a minor one. I think that I thought, because that is considered the national epic of the Greek people, it might have been magnanimous of Christopher Lloyd to include someone in the tradition of Irene Pappas or Melina Mercury, a Greek-American actor. But the whole idea of cultural appropriation is very controversial. I have no problem with a character in a playing a role that the original author did not really envision, as long as it's symmetrical. And by that I mean, if you want to wear dreadlocks and you're white, that's fine. If you want to wear a blonde wig and you're black, that's fine. Just so it's reciprocal. The only problem is when the character is so far off from what the author intended that it affects the narrative. So I don't think it would be wise to make a movie with a white Martin Luther King bio.
Oh, this is so disappointing. As this man was speaking, I was like, I kind of agree with what you're saying here. I think it's a big problem with Hollywood. I don't agree with the fact that it's like, I mean, the Greeks and say, oh, it's a national epic. It's kind of like, well, I'm not going to go into too much. Like, first of all, a lot of Greek people need to be realistic about their ancestry as well, because many of them are descendants of Vandals, okay, and not the ancient Greeks. So there's that, okay, that kind of like denial of the fact that it hasn't had a static, you know, descent of, you know, ancestry. So you just can't claim because you happen to inhabit the landmass that you happen to be of the same stock as the ancient Greeks. That's a myth, okay, and that's an idea that sounds really nice, but we know the conflicts that have taken place in that region, and we also know the huge population shifts that have taken place in southern Europe. So I think people need to be realistic about those, you know, projecting, and that's kind of that anachronistic view of phenotype. So I think that's quite important, but it's fine. Okay, let's say the Greeks, the modern Greeks view it as their, you know, their national foundational text, you know, what he said. I kind of somewhat agree. Like, yeah, put a couple of Greek people in there, you know, in major roles. That would have been cool. I'd like Hollywood to do that more, just across the board, just to kind of respect what, you know, when they're taking something from somewhere. I'm sick of seeing these epics. And spoiler alert, when it comes to this one, for instance, the Odyssey, I find it really jarring. I don't know if it was a decision to do this, but you know, normally they'll give them British accents, and that pisses me off enough. It's kind of like, why do you think there were received pronunciation British accents in you know, in the Fertile Crescent, in the Levant, in ancient Greece and Rome? That's always pissed me off. It's like, at least it wouldn't be that hard to make everyone speak with maybe like an Italian accent or a kind of Greek leaning accent, because I don't think that would ruin the immersion. I think it might be take a bit of adjustment, but then you'd get into it, and it's actually a really nice homage to the people that are there, to make it lean towards, you know, what the people sound like, because maybe it's likely they would have sounded more like them than British people. But this movie goes a step further and makes everyone speak in an American accent. So even like Tom Holland is faking an American accent. And I'm like, why the hell did Christopher Nolan do that? So now we've progressed. It's like, oh, we're not going to use the British accent or the Scottish accent, which they like to do, is British and Scottish accents. It's kind of like, how do we drum into these people that these people were white like us? What's the whitest thing that you can think of? I know, a British accent. So they make all these war epic movies and they make everyone go, thou dost. I was like, oh, stop being stupid, you guys. Yeah, these people didn't speak with a British accent. Yeah, stop trying to write yourself into a history that you don't belong in. But like I said, they've gone one step further with this and they make him speak in American accents. And now it's just like, that was just like, that actually threw me out even more. So that kind of like, you know, the whole suspension of disbelief, that was ruined for me, because they were speaking in American accents and it kept jarring me. It's like, why are they speaking in American accents? That doesn't add anything to this movie. So they've kind of like gone from one era, you know, one end of the pendulum, and they've just swung to the other. It's kind of like, guys, this is a miss. Like, but these people are constantly culturally appropriating. Where has this guy gone wrong? Well, you can clearly see he's talking about Lupita Nyong'o here. So I thought he was going to make a criticism across the board, but clearly his criticism is, oh, well, you know, it just rolls you out completely. It's like, dude, have you not read Homer's works? Yeah? There's Ethiopians all over his works. Someone's already mentioned in the chat, Memnon, the Ethiopian, Zeus, the Ethiopian. And I know you guys don't like me saying that, but Zeus Ethiops is a thing in Chios, yeah, where Homer was from. Yeah, so Zeus Ethiops, Memnon the Ethiopian, Memnon, by the way, the brother of Helen of Troy. Yeah, so they're everywhere in his epics. Like I said, he had an epic called The Ethiopians that we don't have the text for, but he wrote an epic literally given to the Ethiopians. There wasn't some distance, and we could go into the descriptions of, I'm sure we'll get into that, but the descriptions of the characters, where many of them are being described as black-skinned individuals, which they don't like to acknowledge as being a reality. But it's kind of like, guys, you've got to have to deal with the fact that these people weren't pink-skinned. That's just something that you've projected onto this society. And what you do is you reinforce and reinforce and reinforce and reinforce and reinforce until finally we get to the stage where everyone has just submitted to the fact that the ancient Greeks looked like the two people on the screen, and they did not. They didn't look like you. They didn't talk like you. They didn't like you. Yeah. If I turned up in ancient Greece and you turned up, you would be more likely to be beheaded. Yeah. If we both approached, you know, an ancient Greek, you know, we had an army in front of them. Yeah. They're more likely to go, Ethiopian, come. Yeah, come, my wise sage. What shall we do? And then look at you and they'd be like, behead this beast. Behead this monster. Behead this monster and send his head back to to the tribes up north. Make sure they know that if they ever cross this line, they shall be. That's what would happen, guys. So you just got to be realistic about this.
Or a black Abraham Lincoln to be too jarring. But I have no problem that he's using an African-American character for Helen and Clytemnestra, or they're two characters. They were mythologically sisters.
Just to be clear, I know I'm nitpicking here, but Lupita Nyong'o is not African-American. Okay, she's African, and she's Mexican, Mexican nationality, but she's an African who is in America. I obviously know these people struggle making those differences and understanding that we're not all the same, but that's what you expect, you know.
So there's no problem there. Zorba the Greek was played by a Mexican-American actor, Anthony Quinn. He did a brilliant job. It's only when it's so jarring that it's deliberately interrupts the narrative in a way that it's almost impossible to follow.
So did you hear that? So basically what he's just said there in short is it's okay for a Mexican to do it. Yeah, they did a great job, but it's just jarring when they're too black. That's what he said. It's just jarring when they're too black. When they're black, it's just kind of like, I can't get the immersion. Like, dude, come on. Ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. This is just racist ranting from a group of people who now feel very comfortable to complain about things that you don't need to complain about. If you watch the movie, it is not jarring at all. It's actually I would say, quite a masterful stroke. In particular, was her casting. And if you weren't such a racist, you would be able to see how effective it is in the movie, you know. But there you go.
It's a character deviation, or
And London, let me jump on that as well. The whole, you know, the false equivalences, yeah, with these characters they bring on. Well, you know, how would it be like if we played a white MLK? You know, what would that be like? You know, if we, I was like, guys, are you that dumb? You can't be that dumb. You know, I hear them make these arguments, and they all make the same. Oh, well, what would happen? It's like, first of all, MLK's race was core. Yeah. he was a, you know, he was a liberation fighter. Yeah, he was a, you know, whatever you want to call him, a black, you know, freedom fighter for race, to free black people from oppression. Okay. Helen of Troy was not a white nationalist like you guys are. Yeah, she wasn't someone who, oh, the purity of the white Greeks. Yeah. I am Helen of Troy who fight for the whiteness of the Greeks. Like, that never happened, guys. Her race is entirely irrelevant. The one thing about Helen of Troy that rings true is that her beauty needs to be abstract enough for her not to look like anyone else, so that everyone goes, wow, this woman looks like she's not from here. That's the idea. Okay, it's not so you can just pick someone who looks mildly beauty. Oh, I think Sydney Sweeney. Oh, I think Sydney Sweeney should play the role. You know who that's an impression of? Sydney Sweeney would do it so good. You know who that's an impression of? Yeah. Well, with the point of Helen of Troy is not to pick someone who just like look like everyone else with a bit of makeup on their face. You know, looks good in a bit of makeup. That's not the point of Helen of Troy. It's to pick someone whose beauty is so abstract and so that everyone was like, oh my goodness, I've never seen a woman who looks like this. And in the midst of the cast that, like I said, Nolan has picked, Lupita Nyong'o works really well for that selection. Okay, works really well for that selection. So they come up with these stupid false equivalences, and they never work because they're obsessed with race. Oh my god, these people are so flipping tiresome. I swear, I feel so fatigued listening to them. Bunch of idiots, man.
You know, if somebody has one arm and the character has two arms, but the Greeks were very tolerant of, and I don't really think.
I'm just gonna throw this out very quickly as well. Yeah, and I'm not gonna stick on this very long. London, Abe was black, but we're not gonna talk about that. Let's just leave that aside, and we're never gonna hear me talk or add to that. If you want to know more, shout me in my DMs, okay, and we can take that forward. But yeah, he's another victim of whitewashing, but we'll talk about that another time.
Think that they had a notion of racial distinctions like we do. The Ethiopians are described by Homer elsewhere as the most noble of all people. So it's not, I don't think it's going to be, I don't think it'll affect the reception of that character, and whether Helen and Clytemnestra are well acted or whether they enhance or detract from the narrative or the film adaptation of it will depend on the quality of the performance.
Yeah, and look, I agree with that. I think
if you don't think it will detract from the narrative, have you not just contradicted everything that you just said? It's almost as though you're agreeing that acting is as important as the performance, particularly when you have a story that is clearly a myth. Yeah, it's all about how well these people embody and execute their roles. It's like, why are we having this conversation? Because you guys are so insecure. There's nothing quite like white male insecurity for projecting its ailments onto other people whilst remaining the most violent, the most vile, all of the things that they bemoan in other races, they are literally simultaneously doing. Okay. You know, you see it. I'm laughing, but it's not funny. You'll see the police like punching and kicking and choking. So stop resisting. Stop. So the very thing that they're telling them, stop being violent. You stop it like that. Do you understand what a sickness that is? To be killing someone and to tell them to stop killing you. But that's their everyday default. They wake up in the morning, commit crimes, and then put them on other people. That's literally their modus operandi. Stop fiddling kids. You're the kiddie fiddlers. You're the violent ones. You do it all. It's wild how they project their behavior onto other people.
I think that what has caught most attention, and I think you have a view about this, is that Lupita Nyong'o, who plays Helen of Troy, she gave a recent press interview in which she seemed to criticize Homer for the lack of time he gave to women in his original work, instead choosing to tell the story from the masculine side, as she put it. Let's take a look.
I'd be like, so Homer, how do you feel about the screen time given to these women, considering how little you spend with them? Oh, okay.
And then do you lean forward and look at him like that?
Yes, like, remember us?
No.
So this is Piers Morgan being his usual disgusting self. This is why I hate this man. Any idiot who doesn't have, you know, with an IQ above room temperature can see that Lupita Nyong'o was being ironic and clearly making a witty joke. Clearly she said runtime. She didn't say, oh, you know, Lupita Nyong'o has criticized Homer for not giving women more exposure. She didn't say that at all. She didn't say, I'd talk to him about how much he's written women into the sea. She literally said screen time. So she obviously knows. She obviously knows that Homer did not write a screenplay. Yeah, he wrote a poem. So this is someone who's just being witty and funny for the sake of an interview. And this is what Piers Morgan and these insecure, flimsy, weak, unimpressive, just vile Indo-European males have been doing, trying to find any excuse to demonize her words, demonize her actions, demonize anything she does. And she's literally carrying herself with grace in the face of the most vile racial abuse. Even on Piers Morgan's thumbnail, he has her as in the 12, was it? The slave, 12 years a slave. He has her in the 12 years a slave AI version of Helen of Troy. He has that in his thumbnail. Now, anybody, I'm sure there's people, either Piers Morgan himself or in his team, who knows that that was not the correct image to use for the thumbnail, but he's done it anyway. So you can see what this disgusting idiot is about, to the point where you can't even make a joke in clearly what is a informal kind of off the cuff interview without an idiot like this snipping it and then using it as an opportunity to demonize her. These people are really sick in their head, really, really sick.
Now, at the premiere of the movie, Samantha Morton, who plays the Greek goddess and sorceress Circe, took the opportunity to reinforce the idea that this was a feminist reimagining of the mythical story. Let's take a look at that.
In history, women have been vilified, whether you're a midwife, whether you're, a herbalist, whether you're a healer, whether you're just in tune with the moon. Like, women have just been vilified throughout history, and I think that was my take on it. But also, Chris's interpretation of the original text and then kind of condensing it into this essential oil of Circe was phenomenal. And that I just worked from the text. It was all there for me.
So basically,
so to be clear, before this pig continues talking, the Circe scene that she's referring to, that she stars in, that is easily one of the highlights of the movie. One of the best. So I'm not going to spoil it, like I said, for you guys, but that's one of the best scenes in the movie. It stuck out for me. It's stuck in my mind. It's definitely one of the high points. And it did everything that she just said there. And there was nothing feminist about it. This guy's such an idiot. because she hasn't made a claim there about, she just said that the way Christopher Nolan has reimagined it, and the demonization of women, by the way, the demonization of women is real, okay? Particularly in the, well, it was at its height in the kind of like early modern era, medieval world, but in the ancient world as well, there was this demonization of, you know, women being, you know, sometimes in places of power, you know, particularly women who, you know, who had, you know, who could cast spells or this, that, and the other. Like, men didn't get the same vilification as women in those roles. And that's all she was saying. So she plays a character who has magical powers. And one of the things they do really well in that scene is they portray that she does horrible things, but she does them from a position of being vulnerable as a woman. And it's like, how do I protect myself in this world of men where men carry swords? How do I protect myself in this world of aggressive men where they rape and they pillage and they do all of these other things? How do I protect myself as a woman in this world where I have no protection? That's what she was communicating. But insecure piece of crap, Piers Morgan here, here's that, and here's, oh, well, why are white men always being demonized? Oh my God, oh, the next thing you know, they're going to be hanging us from the gallows. Like, what's wrong with this? What's wrong with these people, man? Someone help me, man. I just don't understand why they're so pathetic, man.
I think the modern vernacular would be Homer was a bit of a sexist pig. He made it all about men. And this film,
that's not what she just said. And she wasn't even speaking specifically about Homer.
Redresses the balance to make it actually more equal in terms of gender presence.
I'm not sure that's accurate.
That's my vernacular version.
Yeah, Lupita, you know, she admitted that she had never read the Odyssey as an undergraduate or graduate. I don't know how you can do that in today's education at Hampshire and Yale, but.
And see, so that there, did you hear that? That was a really nasty slight that he's, you know, how can you not have read the Odyssey in today's education? Well, it's easy. It's not on your curriculum. Yeah. People don't just randomly pick up the Odyssey and decide to read it. I know many people claim they do. Okay. And I'm sure a lot of people have done, maybe in their later years or maybe as a part of a book club or this, that, and the other, but it's not in everyone's curriculum. So for him to make that, he's making her sort of, notice how he made it about her education. So he didn't just say, you know, she hasn't read the Odyssey, which is unfortunate. It would be good if it was, you know, taught more widely. So I don't know how you can do that and go through education. Like, talking about the fact that she's had a substandard education because she hasn't read the Odyssey. This guy is vile. And these are the kind of dog whistles that they talk with constantly. You know, these men are constantly talking with these dog whistles. Yeah, where they're always thinking that they can make these little nasty slights and slurs. Where did Piers find these guys from, man? It's really pathetic, man.
So if she had read it, I think and had thought about it for a long time, it's one of the most pro-feminist works of Greek literature. And it's really the seminal work because...
She hasn't said anything about feminism. She just talked about the fact that she would have liked more screen time in the movie. Yeah, that's literally all she said. All of this is just a projection, once again, of your white male insecurity.
Homer is contiguous with the rise of the Greek city-state. And if you look, there's every aspect of womanhood in that play. There's the loyal, crafty, brilliant Penelope who saves the kingdom while Odysseus is gallivanting around or is enduring all of these perils. She outwits these men. You've got Circe, who sort of reifies the idea that men can be pigs by actually turning them into pigs. She's all powerful. You have Athena, kind of the Parthenos, the virgin goddess, but she's also the goddess of wisdom. She's the most stable of all the Greek gods, and in some cases, the most powerful. She's the person who allows Odysseus to get home. You've got Calypso, who kind of has created her own area where she defines her own sexuality. Then you've got, you've got Helen, the most beautiful woman in the world, and her sort of nefarious sister, Clytemnestra. So you've got almost every type of expression, whether it's domestic or single or divine, in that epic. And then you even have the monstrous women, the Scylla and the sirens, who are all powerful and kind of evil. So the main character is a male, but most of the males don't end up well or are not portrayed well, whether it's the 102 suitors or it's the crew of Odysseus that always breaks his advice to be moderate and temperate and not offend the gods, and they all end up dying, or it's the weak-kneed Menelaus, or it's the haughty but not very talented Agamemnon. So it's, I would say, I want.
But that's everything that he's just said there is true, but none of these women have said anything about that. So they're just arguing against themselves. Once again, these insecure men just create these straw man arguments that haven't been raised by anybody. No one has said that Homer was sexist. No one has made that claim even at all. No one has claimed that there's anything wrong with Homer's text. They've literally just said, one has said they really love the way that Christopher Nolan has adapted it to amplify some of Homer's messaging. And the other one has said, in a joke, I would have liked it if I had more lines, but it wasn't a criticism of Homer. It was literally a joke for an interview. I mean, you can't write this stuff, man. Seriously.
I would say for that period it was probably composed somewhere orally around 700 to 675, that was one of the most enlightened works of Western literature in the history of Western literature. So I didn't understand the criticism of the actresses, but I haven't seen the movie yet.
Was he deaf or is he just ignorant? Did he hear criticism? Because I didn't hear it. But then, you know, when you're two white men having a whinge about how hard life is being a white man in this world where everything is set up against you and there's always women and brown people conspiring to take you down. I understand the fatigue they must be feeling, constantly having to fight for their position in society and constantly having their rights taken away and constantly being underrepresented and constantly being turned down for jobs. I understand it's so hard for these guys. I really do get it. I feel like we don't give white men enough credit for the struggle that they put up with. Seriously, all the persecution that they face, the amount of white men on a daily basis that are, you know, killed by black police officers globally is just shocking, you know, and the amount of these horrid black and brown people starting wars all over the world in these peaceful white nations, taking their natural resources and, you know, interfering with their politics. We just have to stop, guys. Yeah, we have to stop persecuting white people, because these two men on the screen, these are the consequence of our persecution of white men. Yeah, these are the consequences.
Well, let's bring in some of our other guests, A.M. Wilson and Daniel Mendelsohn, to start with. Well, A.M. Wilson, your own daughter, Emily, wrote what people have perceived to be a kind of feminist translation of the Odyssey. Do you recognize that characterization? I mean, from what Victor was just saying, it sounds like it didn't particularly need feminizing, but what is your view?
Well, I wouldn't wish to speak for Emily, whom I adore and admire. But the last speaker, Victor, was bang on right. This is a book very largely about females. And after all, don't forget the whole war broke out, partly because a female semi-divine figure, Helen, was abducted, and partly because the female deities, particularly Pallas Athene, but also Hera, the sister stroke wife of Zeus, the chief god, want it to happen. So women are very, very powerful figures in this story, and they're certainly very dominant figures. And also another person I'd like to bring to mind, who isn't perhaps very familiar to all the audiences on both sides of the Atlantic, is a Victorian scholar and writer called Samuel Butler, who was so filled with the ideas that Victor was just expressing, that he believed that Homer was a woman.
That's really?
That the author of the Odyssey must have been a woman, because he was so sympathetic to the female point of view. Right. So I don't think Emily Wilson, who's a great woman. And
by the way, to be clear, the name Homer, given to the works of Homer, we don't know if a Homer wrote these works. Okay, it was ascribed, they've very much been ascribed to Homer, but the writers of these texts are very much unknown. So they could have been written by women. They could have been written by African women. I think they were. But there you go. You know, this is the thing. We're not entirely sure. you know. But this is the thing, like they rubber stamp things and then send them off to the general public, and then we all call it Homer's Odysseys, as though we have a, you know, these books penned and signatured by a Greek called Homer. In reality, they might not have even been written by a Greek. Okay, and we certainly don't know if the name was Homer, but there you go.
Has herself, in a recent interview in one of the newspapers, the Financial Times, said she doesn't regard herself as particularly modern. She thinks of herself as a sort of late Victorian. I think she's following along in this Victorian tradition of realizing that the Odyssey is very sympathetic to the feminine.
So just to be clear, I mean, you're not speaking for Emily, but
no, I'm
obviously
not. She wouldn't like me to speak.
Right, but you know her view about this. I mean, is she a little bit taken aback by this raging online debate about the supposed over-feminizing of the movie, because that in some way goes against the integrity of the original Odyssey?
And let me make it clear, the movie is not over-feminized, guys. So, you know, if you're going to watch it once again and expect it to be this kind of like I mean, it's not over-feminized. Will it offend white men? Yes, it will. Because I think what a lot of these men want a reversion to, they want a reversion back to, you know, England in the, you know, England in the late kind of, in the kind of like middle to late modern era. Yeah, when, you know, you'd go to a you know, a Shakespearean play and all of the people are cast by white men. You know, you've got white men in blackface playing Othello, and then white men, little white boys playing girls, yeah, dressed up as girls. Because, you know, back in the day, they didn't have any women in theatre. So a lot of people kind of watch Game of Thrones and they see women, it's like, no, those would have been little boys. Okay, those were little boys. Yeah, in these theatre productions. And I think this is what they want a reversion to. Can we just go back to the good old days of theatre when white men could be white men and white boys could be white women and white men could be black men and white men could be Asians? Could we just go back to that time when we didn't have to look at all of these other people sullying our fine cinema? This is what they want. You know, these are a strange and peculiar bunch of people, I swear to you.
Well, Emily is a US citizen. She knows what the United States is like, and she knows that there are sort of culture wars going on all the time. So she's not taken aback by anything, I don't think.
Let me bring in Daniel. So Daniel, you've been quite critical of the translation for being too keen to strip the heroic and masculine out of the original Odyssey. Is that right?
Sorry, which translation?
Well, of Emily's version for the movie.
Well, I don't.
Emily's version for the movie. Emily Wilson didn't make a translation for the movie. She made a translation which was then used by Christopher Nolan, to be clear. And it's been highly praised by everyone apart from insecure white men. That's how it goes. She was able to preserve people were talking about the kind of like the rhyming scheme of the original Homer's Odyssey poems, of the original poems. She was able to preserve the rhyme scheme and also didn't water down some of the sentiments and sensibilities in and around sexuality and gender, like many of these white males who have remixed the translations have done. So that was the only issue. Like I said, the only people who are offended by meritocracy and equality are the people who benefit from bias and selectivity, which is always white men. So they're the ones who are always offended by DEI, equality measures, you know. Oh, we just want people to be hired because they're best for the job. No, you don't. You want people to be hired because they're white and they're men. Because the moment you have women being hired and the moment you have brown people being hired, you have a problem with it. You have a problem with it. So therefore, that exposes the fact that you're not for equality. That's why you're offended by everything.
My criticism of Emily's translation, I think, has to do with the way that it partakes of a trend that we have seen in recent years to sort of, let's call it, de-heroize Odysseus. So I think, you know, when there's a choice between two alternative possible translations for a word describing Odysseus, she'll use the most pejorative possible words. So for example, there's an adjective in Greek that most people translate as extremely cunning or extremely clever. She translates it as liar. And I've seen this in other movie versions. For example, the movie The Return that came out a couple of years ago sort of stripped.
And by the way, I'm not sure how much, I haven't looked into this, but with my knowledge of the white male manipulation, this kind of leads back to the whole argument in and around the usage or the utilization of terms like melas, melancroes as being words describing or derivatives of the term black, and then therefore luca, lukolenos, meaning white. And this makes me think about how honest they are about the way they translate these terms, because they use these terms very always to the benefit of 19th century white racial sciences, which is when a lot of these kind of works were being touched on. Okay, that's when they decided what these words meant in the modern English lexicon. That's when they made these decisions. So you got words, they said, oh, it means extremely cunning. Or did you translate it to extremely cunning because he was a, in your view, white male protagonist who you've placed on this pedestal and therefore he can do no wrong? And what Emily done is translated it to its truest form in contemporaneous Greek literature, where we see the word being used to describe dishonest people and therefore a liar. I'm inclined to believe her because she's less driven by her insecurities and ideologies than the white men that preceded her. This is what white men do. They change words. So I kind of came to the conclusion, I don't even believe Luco means white. I don't believe Luco means white. Okay, I think it means light. I think they've used it to describe or to mean white because they want to include themselves in a history that doesn't include them. Now, why do I say that? Because we know if we look at the Ptolemaic maps, we have on the west coast of Africa, the Leuco-Ethiops, the people of Leuco-Ethiops, okay? And that's where modern day Senegambia is. Now, the only reason I can think they would have a people described as white Ethiopians is not because there was a bunch of blonde-haired, blue-eyed people living along the equator. We know that's an impossibility. The likelihood is that these were a lighter-skinned people, perhaps a Fulani people who are in that region, yeah, or maybe like a Fulani Hausa people, or maybe even like an Igbo people who can be incredibly light-skinned as well. And they happen to take on the term Leuco-Ethiops, meaning light Ethiopians. The reason we have so much debate around these terms is because these guys from the jump have not been honest. And there often is a necessity for people to come like Emily Wilson, discard all of the previous translations and say, I'm going to translate it with fresh eyes and not be influenced by these insecure white men who have been poisoning the well of history, of, etymology, of epigraphy for centuries now, to meet their, and this is what we haven't done enough of in Egyptology, where we just discard all of the crap they've left us and actually start from scratch and see what we get. So I quite like that,
Strips away all of the glamour of Homer's Odyssey. Homer's Odyssey has its protagonist, a character who is brilliant, funny, charming, insinuating, seductive, as well as being, a Bronze Age hero. He's not averse to violence. He's not averse to trickery of a very dastardly kind, but he's an extremely complicated, to use Emily's adjective, character. And I do see in recent both scholarly writing about.
And what I can see here is, why would people get offended about people interpreting Homer's character differently? You'd only get offended if you were over invested in him. Like first of all, he's a, Odysseus. Sorry, I might have said Homer there. I meant Odysseus. Odysseus is a mythical character. Okay, Odysseus is a character from a story. If people want to interpret him as being more nefarious than how you view him, then just deal with that. Who cares? Everyone has a right to their own interpretation of a text, certainly when it's not a historical text. Okay, it's a text that is a story. Okay, it might be a story once again that is adjacent to historical things that took place, but it's still a story. And the fact they feel so invested, you know, he wasn't perfect, but he was, it shows that they need him to be good. Why do you need him to be good so much? Is he your dad? Like, why do you need him to be a good character? He was written flawed. He was deliberately written as a flawed character. That is unavoidable. Why are you getting offended that people want to make him appear less than perfect? He wasn't Jesus. We're not talking about translations of the Bible here. Why are these men so invested? And it's the same reason. Some of you may have seen the short that I posted recently about, you know, the obsession of white men and ancient Rome, you know, where they'll be thinking about it 4 or 5 times a week, which I just find hilarious. So I know I've raised this so many times, but I think it's so funny. It's like, why the frick would you, if you're not a historian, why would you just be sitting around thinking about ancient Rome? It's because you need something to connect to. You need these characters, man. You know, these people need these characters to be real. You know, that's why they say, oh, they were real. Oh, our father, Odysseus will guide us back to the great times when we ruled as Greek people across the world. Not you, mate. Not your ancestors, mate. Nothing to do with you, didn't like you, thought you smelled. That's the reality of it. Sorry. Yeah. Sorry about that. Sorry to be the bearer of bad news. Didn't like you very much. Okay? That's the reality of it. These people are just like he doesn't have to be perfect. You don't have to be offended that people are sullying his name. He didn't really exist. For God's sake, get a flipping life, man.
The Odyssey in this movie, a kind of stripping away of Odysseus, what used to be seen as these sort of glamorous, brilliant, scintillating qualities of the character, and making him into this, as somebody just on Twitter referred to Odysseus as a mass murderer, you know. So I do think that's a problem. I think you have to give this character all of his many facets. And in my own translation, I'm trying to sort of be as scrupulous as possible, not in trying to turn Homer into something.
You're trying to whitewash him. Okay, let's just be quiet. You're trying to whitewash him. You're trying to whitewash his deeds. You're trying to make him sound faultless. You've already exposed yourself. That's what you're doing.
That fits our ideas of masculinity or whatever, but as somebody who reflects the values of a very remote culture in which a certain kind of, as we would say, performative masculinity was not considered to be a bad thing.
Okay.
You know.
Let me bring in. We can talk like this for this.
Just reply to that.
Yeah, I want to give you right a reply.
Because I mean, I think Emily is enormously charmed by Odysseus. Just to make that point, I mean, and one of the points she makes is
she can't be charmed by Odysseus. She's a woman. Yes, she can't be charmed by Odysseus or whatever. Charmed how? If she was charmed by Odysseus, she would have left the translation to a man. You know, she should know better.
Charming men often are extremely dishonest. But I mean, Virgil, for example, who was Homer's greatest fan and created his Aeneid out of the Trojan story, one of the very first things that the Trojans, who were wondering whether to bring in a wooden horse into Troy, which is what led to its destruction, says, is this really the way that we understood Ulysses' character? As they call him Ulysses, we call him Odysseus if we're Greek. But in other words, Odysseus, among many other things, was a notorious liar, and he lies and deceives and gives different versions of events throughout the Odyssey. And that's part of the humor. I mean, among other things, it's a very humorous epic. And one of the things that we enjoy about Odysseus, certainly I know Emily, because I've known her for over 50 years, she enjoys about his character is that he is dishonest. And I don't think Homer, to give her old-fashioned Greek word name, I don't think Homer wants to deceive us into thinking that thinking that Odysseus was a very
upright.
And this is what I like is this guy on the panel is the only one that's approaching this with any kind of, objectivity and nuance. The other ones, you can see they are obsessed. They have this white male insecurity where he has to be faultless, he has to be flawless, and you can't touch Western civil. Like this is the language of delusion. Okay, it's the same kind of rhetoric that you get from Zai Hawass and co. When it comes, it's like you guys don't talk, you don't communicate like academics or normal people. You communicate like fanatics. You communicate like people who are driven by things that should have no place in a critique of an ancient text. It should have no place. Like, go and start a church, for God's sake. That's where you guys belong. You belong on a pulpit where you can then push your far right. And I'm talking about one of these middle belt churches, by the way. You know what I mean? Go and push your ideology in a sundown town somewhere on a pulpit. That's where it'll be well received. Okay, and I'm sure you'll get all of those Christians reading pagan texts happily because they don't care about stuff like that. What they care about is what you care about, which is obsession with race. This is the only guy here who's talking in any way, shape, or form like someone who's an academic.
Heroed in the way that Daniel just articulated.
I don't think so, because he's shown to be very brave. He's shown to be a good dad. Thinking back to your an earlier guest on the program of in which somebody was sharing the most horrific details of his son about erections and so forth, Michael Brian Johnson. But
yeah.
I mean, I think there's a very good, not bromance, but a very good relationship between Telemachus and Odysseus, and they weep together. And also, it's among other things which we haven't mentioned, Odysseus is sitting with this beautiful woman, Calypso, having what many of us, if we were sad old men, think was rather a wonderful time on her island, having lots of sex and food brought to him and so on. And he sits weeping, thinking of his wife at home. And she, similarly, in Ithaca, is weeping, thinking of him, even though he's been deceiving her all through the marriage, and she knows that. But nonetheless, they love one another.
So there's been no deliberate Wilson plot.
I don't think there's a Wilson
plot. Hero.
No, very much not. And heroes are not the same as saints. And heroes are full of...
mostly flawed characters.
They are flawed characters. Think of...
Exactly. And once again, I'll jump on the fact that the word heroes, I am of the impression, and very strongly of the impression, that the word heroes descends from ancient Kemetic. I think it was inherited from ancient Kemetic. The ancient Kemetic word heru, which referred to, in this context, demigods, heads. Okay, people who the word head was used interchangeably, so it wasn't exclusive for Horus, the deity. It was used to describe heads, and heads is used in the same way as it's used in Yoruba, where we say orishas. It's that same root. Okay, so these are heads, and they were the people who were essentially the descendants, or the people who had, I shouldn't even say descendants, they were the people who have ascended into godliness, ascended into godhood, okay, ascended into the ancient pantheon, so to speak. So they were called Heru, or the house of Heru, and that word Heru was inherited by the ancient Greeks and gave them the word hero, which is what they called their demigods. So we have the same meaning, and we have that single line of inheritance. And we know that, I mentioned before the fact that, the Heracles was, his name came directly from Herishaf or Herisha, which is the same word we get Orisha from. So you have that straight line of descendants, etymologically speaking. And that very word hero that we have in ancient Greek today was a way to simply describe demigods, those who descend from the gods. In ancient Egyptian was the other direction, in that the people of the pantheon ascended from humanity into veneration, ascended into godhood. So it's just a slight difference in the way that we viewed it.
Give Achilles with the other great Homeric poem, the Iliad. He's full of the most terrible flaws.
And you've got to leave us. Thank you very much indeed for joining us. We really appreciate it.
It's amazing. Thank you so much.
It's a shame that he's going to leave the most intelligent person on the panel, the only one who actually speaking with any kind of sense, which is such a shame.
Expert family response.
And the great thing is that we should always read. I mean, the first speaker, Victor, saying he couldn't understand students going to a university and not reading Homer. And I can understand it, but I do wish they would, because it's just the best book in the world. And Western literature has just been downhill ever since.
Well said. They should. And Victor, I think, would absolutely agree.
I could tell you right now, Piers Morgan has not read it. I'm going to tell you that right now. He's sitting here harping, oh, it's a foundation of Western civilization. Piers Morgan's not read it. He's not read either book, Iliad. Or I'm telling you that right now, 100% Piers Morgan's not read it.
Great. Thank you very much indeed for joining.
Thank you, Piers.
We're going to sub you out, Ian Wilson, with brilliant contribution. We're going to bring in three of our regular guests, actually, to talk about a lot of the more negative reaction to the
fact that he's got Critical Drinker and Nerdrotic as regular guests pains my soul. What kind of poison would you have people who are so overtly racist on their channels? What kind of poison is he dripping from this platform to platform people like that? Gosh, golly.
The Odyssey movie is being driven in part by the movie fan community on YouTube, which is very vociferous. So we're going to bring in two of the biggest names in that space, Will Jordan, aka the Critical Drinker, and Gary Bigler, who's the Nerdrotic, of course. That's rounding off our truly epic panel, host of Bet News, Mark Lamont Hill. So welcome to the three of you, and Victor's kindly agreed to stay here. Now, Victor teed this up by saying at the start, Critical Drinker. The fuss exclusively about the choice of having Lupita Nyong'o, a black woman, African-American actress, playing Helen of Troy was, somehow wrong. That because mythology has her, even though...
Now, just to be clear, we know the politics of the person in the top middle and the top right. These guys are both essentially far right conservatives trying to, act, portray themselves, masquerade as moderate academics, and they're not. You've heard their viewpoints. And then the bottom left and the bottom middle, we've got just outrageously racist white supremacists, essentially. So we've got a panel of white supremacists, and then Mark Lamont Hill being the sole voice of reason, and he happens to be black. Yeah, okay.
She's not a real person, has her as a white woman. This shouldn't have been the case. What is your view?
Yeah, I mean, it's worth keeping in mind that something like...
Will is a moron, by the way. This guy's he's so stupid. I don't know if anyone wastes their time on the Critical Drinker, but he's one of the most stupid people you ever come across. Incredibly disingenuous, always contradicting himself, and just a vile human being that isn't... His whole gimmick is he talks with a strong Scottish accent and pretends to be drunk during his reviews. That's his whole gimmick. He doesn't have anything of value to add to a conversation like this. But let's see what he has to say.
Like the Odyssey is this epic fantasy story, but it's fantasy grounded in the real world. It's set within a very specific geographical location and time. And
is it though? Is it a very specific? Do we know where that specific geographic location is? Because it's still up for debate. I know a lot of people have settled on Turkey, but we don't know for sure if that's where Troy was. We don't know where it was set. Okay, so that's one of the things. Yeah, we don't actually know for sure where it's set. That's where there's been so much debate about its location. So saying that with that amount of confidence is already very, very disturbing.
Like any geographical location and time, it has demographics of people that are believable in that time.
So we know what the demographic. So he's talking about. I'm assuming that he's talking about ethnicity here. He thinks that we know for sure what the demographic of the ancient Greeks was like at 800 BC. That's the claim being made here. We know what the demographics of the Aegean was 3,000 years ago. We know that with absolute certainty. We know what these people look like. We know what's realistic. No, what he's talking about is a projection of the Hellenic world that he's been spoon-fed since childhood on Hollywood. Yeah. So Hollywood has projected this image of these ancient Romans being pink-skinned, yeah, in one of the hottest climates in the world, blonde-haired and speaking with an English accent. And now that's what he thinks reality is. But the reality of the matter is 800 BC, the Aegean probably looked more like Central Africa than it did like Northern Europe. Now that's going to be a problem for these people. I know they're going to have a problem with Cretan artifacts and Minoan artifacts showing jet black people on there who are not foreigners. They're going to have a problem with Etruscan artifacts showing people with locks and thick lips. They're going to have a problem with all of these things, but it's not going to stop them from existing. This is the sorry, let me let this idiot carry on.
And people who are not. And the best way to contextualize this kind of decision is, say you had a movie set in pre-colonial Africa and one of the tribal leaders was a random white guy, and none of the other characters thought that that was even remotely strange. No one reacted to it and there was no explanation for it. That's kind of the similar.
See, that's the problem with that equivalency is, even if we were going to take your warped perception of the Aegean in that time, there is still the acceptance and the acknowledgement that black people were just a common, if you know history, that is, even if you read the works of Homer, black people are very common. They're common in places of power. They're common in places of leadership. They're common as rival empires. Okay. They're common as people who are holders of knowledge. Obviously, I'm not expecting Will to know any of this because, like I said, he's a moron. But this is the reality. Yeah. So even if you don't believe, and you know that, even if you do believe that they were mainly white, which is just a joke because they didn't like people who look like you, Will. That's just, I'm sorry, but that's just the reality of it. Even if they were like that, yeah, there would have still been black people present, so that wouldn't need explaining. You don't need to explain the odd black people here and there in the cast of the Odyssey, because it actually makes perfect sense in the ancient world. Makes perfect sense 800 BC in the Aegean. What doesn't make sense is a random white person, you know, in a, you know, like you said, in the middle of Central Africa without some kind of backstory or explanation. So once again, you're just making false equivalences, and they create these false equivalences and they hope they're going to land as kind of like, no, one requires explaining and the other doesn't require explaining. What they're trying to do is they're trying to solidify this whitewashed version of the Aegean, the Mediterranean, the ancient world, and they solidify it with outrage. Let me be outraged that people are saying things that are realistic, because I want you to believe that the world was all white. I want you to believe that white people have always been the majority. Do you see the difference here? This is how they manufacture it. This is how they change the way that we perceive history, by being outraged by stupid things that aren't true to begin with. If they shout about it loud enough, then we stop to shout, then we stop fighting back when they create the next outrage. And the next thing they're going to be outraging about is not ancient Greece, but it's going to be North Africa. And it's going to say, why are there black people in North Africa? It's kind of like, are you freaking kidding me? And this is what they do, you know?
Situation to what you have with the Odyssey. It doesn't really make sense contextually, and I think that's what people are reacting to. And this is coming off the back of a period within Hollywood movie making where there has been a lot of rather bizarre race swaps of characters. I mean, if you go back to, you know, things like we've produced over here in the UK, we've had an Asian Sir Isaac Newton, we've had a black Anne Boleyn. These are real historical characters, but we're now supposed to pretend that they're a completely different race, and it doesn't make sense.
Right.
So, I mean, first of all, you guys know how I feel about black Anne Boleyn, so we're not going to go into that. But hey, you know, if the swarthy shoe fits, but we're not going to talk about that. Let's leave black Anne Boleyn to the side for now. But he's talking about bizarre race swaps, and most of them relate to, you know, BBC shows and other shows like Bridgerton and stuff like that, which really are entertainment. Yes, they're real characters, but no one's supposed to watch those shows and believe that that's what people actually look like. It's clearly, those shows are clearly, the diverse casting is a part of the entertainment, it's a part of the spectacle. It kind of cures the what if that people have. Yeah, they're not attempting to be historically accurate when they make these kind of shows. They're trying to be interesting. They did the same in Flipping Horrible Histories, which was also produced by the BBC. where they'll just take famous people and then they dress them up as Henry VIII, as King Charles, as this, that, and the other. Sometimes they'll be white, sometimes they'll be black, sometimes they'll be Indian, sometimes they'll be Chinese. It doesn't matter. It's just a bit of entertainment. Okay, it's a bit of dress up. It's a bit of Comic-Con. Okay, a bit of cosplay, literally speaking. Now, he's going to talk about that and say, oh, there's been, in recent time, there's been, you know, race swapping of. Did you have a problem with Gods of Egypt? Yeah. A film when they literally made Osiris a white man with blonde hair. Osiris. Yeah. Osa, according to Diodorus, who was the Ethiopian who went and founded Egypt, who took a colony, took a group of people out of Ethiopia into Egypt and formed Egypt as a colony. Osa. Yeah, I saw, you know, the Black African, Osiris, the Great Black. That's literally what he's called in ancient Kemet. He has an attestation that was used regularly, which called him the Great Black Osiris. They took the Great Black Osiris and they made him a white man, a whole white man with blonde hair. Now, they'll turn around and say, oh, we had a problem with that casting as well. Really? You had a problem? I bet you it was a silent problem. In fact, I'd bet my right arm that you had a silent problem with that casting. Yeah, just like all these people. Oh, well, I didn't agree with that either. Well, you didn't agree quietly, didn't you? your disagreement with it certainly didn't make the headlines. It certainly didn't make a thumbnail, did it? And this is the thing about these people. They're so disingenuous that you can't even take them seriously, man.
Right, Martin Monhill, I saw you smirking with derision there, I think I'm right in identifying the nature of the smirk. But if I said to you, look, I'm going to be starring as Othello next week in a massive Broadway version of Shakespeare's great play, would you feel that would be appropriate, given I'm a white guy?
See, this is where I know Piers Morgan is illiterate. First of all, thank you for saying Othello. Yeah. So thank you, Piers Morgan, for saying Othello, because what modern white supremacists and, you know, history denialists are trying to claim now is that even Othello wasn't black. He was a Moor, and Moor means Muslim. And he was, well, first of all, Othello was a Catholic. So that kind of defeats the Moor means Muslim thing. Slight problem there. He was the commander of the Spanish fleet and he was a Catholic. Okay, so yeah, that's that argument out of the window. Secondly, we all know that Moor means black man. It means a whole black man. That's what Moor means. That's what Moor has always meant, and that's what Moor will continue to mean. So first of all, thank you for using Othello. But secondly, it's hilarious because Othello throughout history has been played by nothing but white people in blackface. Okay, it's only recently in theatre that they started casting black people to play Othello. So he's like, oh, well, would it be all right if white people did this? It's like, yeah, that's what you've been doing. Yeah, you've been casting white people to play black people. That's literally what Hollywood does with every single period piece. Yeah, it's literally what they do with every single period piece. Cast a white man. Yeah, here's a historical black man. We're gonna cast a white man. Like, what are you talking about? Like, and they really think they make gotchas when they make these stupid, oh, well, you know, MLK, oh, well, you know, Malcolm X, oh, well, the Black Panther. It's kind of like, guys, yeah, there's no white nationalists in the Odyssey. So these people are so stupid. Let me give a quick shout out to Dame Dash, who's dropped a couple of donations. Appreciate you. Let me get my mouse back up. Where's it gone? Okay. Let me get you on the screen. So let's get these one at a time. So he said, nothing to add. Just wanted to say, appreciate all you do, bro. I appreciate that. Also, when are you going to drop part 2 of the Moors video? Damn, that's well overdue, isn't it? You've just reminded me of something. You know, I got that written. I wrote that ages ago. I just haven't sat down and recorded it. I think your second comment says the same thing. So I appreciate those 2 donations very much. You know, an hour 40 minutes in, and the first, you know, overt sign of appreciation. I appreciate it. It's nice to be appreciated when I sit here for 2 hours rambling. So yeah, thank you very much appreciated for that. But yeah, so the Moors video, thanks for that reminder. let's see. I'm gonna try and squeeze getting that part 2 out, you know, a year and a bit later. That's a good shout though. Let's carry on.
First, you read my smirk correctly. Your powers of observation and analysis have really sharpened since I started coming on the show. You're welcome. I think for me the question is always, is it historically accurate? Yes, but also what's the genre? If it's mythic, if it's fantasy, or if the artist is explicitly saying, hey, we're not playing on historical accuracies precisely because of the fantasy aspect of it, I'm fine with it. But if you're...
And to be clear, he's entirely incorrect. Also, entirely correct. Thank you very much for raising that point, Mark Lamont Hill. And I'm just going to quickly just run through a few, since I just saw the movie today. So let me tell you the kind of characters. We have a giant Cyclops. And when I say giant, I mean literally could step on people and unalive them. We have a witch that turns people into animals. We have sirens. We have giants, once again, giant people who walk around with metal as their skin and are twice or 3 times the size of normal men. We have all of the gods actually living and existing and being angry, vengeful, and involved in the lives of people. There's nothing realistic about this movie. So the people, you know, Kojika, well, it's a movie grounded. It's a movie that's grounded in reality, and so you have to honor the grounding of the. Shut up! Shut your stupid mouth, you stupid person. Okay, there's nothing realistic about this. It's purely fantasy. Okay, these people would get have a heart attack or a hernia if you friggin' changed Aragorn's race into, you know, changed Aragorn into a black man. Oh, you know, don't they know Lord of the Rings is grounded in reality? Like, shut up, you morons. Of course it's not grounded in reality. These people are so dumb, it's unbelievable. But yeah, Mark Lamont Hill is just making that very clear. Let me give a quick shout out to One Love Soul. I appreciate you being active in the comments, and I appreciate your $5 donation showing appreciation. Much love to you. And a big shout out to Stephen Carter. Salute, sir. Thank you very much for the $40 donation. It's excellent breakdown as usual. Appreciate that. Glad you're enjoying it. Yeah, let's carry on. Thank you very much for that. That's much appreciated.
Actually not doing that, and you're not eyes wide open, you don't show your cards, then it would be a problem. So if you were playing Othello and we had that conversation, I'd be fine with it. The reason I smirked was because there's a long history in Hollywood of white people playing characters that should be black people. I mean, Charlton Heston as Moses was kind of wild. You know what I mean? Was it Laurence Olivier who played the Mahdi in the 70s film about Muhammad Ahmed al-Mahdi in Sudan? I mean, it's fascinating to me to see the outrage now, particularly since the character.
We've got our issues with.
It's funny, see it there. It's fascinating to see the outrage now, but they never have outrage the other way around. And listen to the idiot Will here.
Those pieces of casting as well.
We got our issues with those pieces of. Have you made a video about it, Critical Drinker? Have you made a video about your issues with those castings? Just out of interest. Have you made a big song and dance? Nerdrotic, have you made a thumbnail making fun of, for instance, The Gods of Egypt or any of the movies that were mentioned here? It's talking about how horrible it is that they're getting white men to play the roles of historically black and dark people. Have you done that? No, you haven't done it, and you don't intend on doing it. So respectfully, keep your issue to yourself. No one wants to hear it.
Yeah, I wasn't alive when that happened.
I'm not sure we should.
I made an entire.
Yeah, I wasn't happy when that happened. Oh, shut up, Nerdrotic. You want everyone to be white men. You guys have a problem with everyone who's not a man, yeah, and everyone who's not white. Like I said, you want a reversion back to the time when little boys played girls and white men played everybody else. That's what you want.
A video about terrible casting choices in Hollywood, and one of them was John Wayne playing Genghis Khan in The Conqueror. I think that's completely absurd as well. So
have you made a movie about it, or have you just whinged about it on the live stream? Once again, we know that you haven't. Shout out to Jonathan. Appreciate you very much, brother, for your $10 donation. You said selective outrage. I'd say, yeah, You know, that's an understatement. You know, we're being kind and calling it selective outrage. These people are just disingenuous, and they are. And Metatron, you can clip this, racist. Okay, these are racist. I'm not gonna. People thought, you know, Metatron kind of like did this whole thing where he clipped me saying that, and obviously his low IQ audience have piled into my comments going, "Oh my god, he's not racist, you know, because he called Helen of Congo. There's nothing racist about that." It's like, guys, you're not going to gaslight me into not calling him a racist because you think it's funny that he's being racist. And because he said, "I'm not a racist, I could have called her Helen of anything. I wouldn't be offended if you called me Metatron of Italy." Idiots. Idiots. You know you're being racist. Like, I'm not gonna sit here. I'm not gonna sit here humoring your stupidity and not calling people who are clearly racists. That's what you are, okay? And racism is a low IQ thing, so I expect you to be proud of the fact that you're called a racist. Yeah, because all of you are. Shout out to you anyway, Jonathan. Let's carry on.
Got plenty of issues with bad
Cost of his life.
whitewashing casting over the years, but that was 50 or 60 years ago. I can't do anything about that now.
Daniel Mendelsohn.
And what do you think you're doing about this? Just you know, since you made that, I can't do anything about it. Do you think that this is some kind of a noble, you know, a noble crusade against the attack of wokeness? Like, what do you think you're doing right now? All you're doing is ruin a cinematic experience and a film that people would otherwise enjoy by making a political statement about something that really isn't controversial. Bunch of insecure white men. Insecure, that's what they are.
One of our other panelists here penned a column for the New York Times entitled, "Does Matt Damon Look Greek?" No. So stop complaining about Lupita Nyong'o. In it, he asks, so what is Mr. Nolan up to? As it turns out,
does Matt Damon look Greek? Okay, so let's see if any of them respond to that. Yeah, because that's a clear one. And what's more important, does Matt Damon look black-skinned? Because, spoiler alert, that's how he's described in the Odyssey. He is described as black-skinned, and now they'll try and change that. Oh, well, you know, it's not black-skinned. It actually means bronze, because this term, when you put the word black together with the word skin, the translation actually is bronze. Okay, can you make that make sense? Because I could see two words here. I could see melas, which means black, and I could see crus, which means skin. And when you put them together to form a compound term, melancrus, we can see the literal translation there is black-skinned. Yeah, black-skinned. How do you put those two words together and suddenly the word transformed to lightly tanned? This is the mental gymnastics these idiots will go through. Yeah, they'll take a term, black-skinned, and they'll say, "Oh, it actually means lightly tanned." But even if that was the case, yeah, you can watch the movie. Yeah, when it comes to what's his face that plays Damon, Matt Damon, who plays him, he's pink. Okay, throughout. There's never a time where he looks brown or bronze, like you said. By the way, even the term bronze, I don't know. I don't think these people know what the color bronze actually looks like, because even though it means black skin, even if it was bronze, let's I don't know. Let's just type in bronze over here. Let's just go to images and see what color is served up for bronze. Okay, so bronze is in the center. Okay, there's bronze. Yeah, there's bronze. I mean, we don't even want to go to copper. Yeah, I mean, this is bronze here, guys. Are we able to see? Let's just do a quick comparison. Let's just type in Matt Damon, the Odyssey. Let's just have a quick comparison. Quick comparison of tones here. Okay, so here's Matt Damon in the Odyssey. Okay, so there he is. Yep. Yeah. Wait, guys, we need to be accurate. Okay, we need to be, you know, accurate to the literature. Okay, let's so melancrous, yeah, black-skinned, or in their in their most distant dreams, yeah, they've translated it to bronze. Here's Matt Damon, and here is the color bronze. I doth see a problem here. I see incompatibility. Yeah. Oh no, but no, Matt Damon was the perfect casting because he's pink like us, and we want everyone to be pink in the movie. Pink people.
That the auteur is using Helen just as the Greek authors did to provoke, challenge, and discomfort how we think about beauty and identity, about who we are and how we relate to the world. By that criteria, what's wrong with it?
What's wrong with it? Well, what I primarily point out for the film is the hypocrisy from Hollywood.
Okay, so notice how he avoided the question about Matt Damon not being Greek and not looking Greek. So he's neither Greek by ethnicity nor does he resemble Greek people. And I spoke about this before, how historically they've done this. They took Will Ferrell, who actually does have a somewhat, no, I wouldn't say fully, but a somewhat kind of like darkish, close to Greek appearance naturally, and they put a blonde wig on him when he played Alexander, because they clearly didn't want anybody in Hollywood going down that road where this great hero of Western civilization is portrayed as anything other than a pink white man. Yeah, he has to be a pinkish skinned white man with a very English accent. Otherwise, you're not going to be cast as Alexander. We don't care if it's historically accurate. We want these Hellenic heroes to be white, pure white. Yeah, okay? Not mixed white, not bronzed white, not tanned white, white. That's what you want. You don't want historical accuracy. And that's why he's not going to answer the question that he's just been asked about Matt Damon being Greek. They'll avoid it.
If you're trying to be provocative, then you're being subversive. You're just coming out and saying, yes, we're being subversive, we're being provocative with this casting. So it's not the best person for the role, and it's not for authenticity. We're trying to challenge traditional beliefs. Well, that's something Christopher Nolan doesn't usually do. This is a game he doesn't usually play.
He's not trying to do any of that if you watch the movie. Once again, these bunch of idiots who make their money jumping the gun about what a movie is going to do. Now, they're going to watch the movie and they realize it's just a very Nolan-esque movie. Like I said, I didn't enjoy it. I'm unlike them. I'm not going to sit here and pretend like it was the greatest thing since sliced bread so that I can grift off my audience and be like, oh, it's really, really good. Oh, because it has to be good because Lupita Nyong'o played, Helen of Troy, and I have to support it. And I thought it was rubbish. That was the most I was like, that was a rubbish movie. I won't be watching that again. I didn't enjoy it at all. I can understand why some people would enjoy it, and I think some people will enjoy it, but it just wasn't my cup of tea. I didn't get any buy-in. Okay, but I did note that the casting was good. So there's nothing wrong with the casting. It was more a case of I just don't think the Odyssey is a well-adapted movie. There's too many different things that take place. So it wasn't a well-adapted movie it wasn't a well-adapted piece of text to become a movie. It doesn't have the natural narrative string that the Iliad has. And I think that's probably one of the big differences that I found. But anyway, let me let this idiot carry on.
And let's not forget that these beliefs, these quote unquote values of diversity and inclusion are baked into the awards rules. So they're baked into the company's rules and the awards rules.
This is another fake, stupid narrative they've come up with. Oh, because Hollywood and the award ceremonies encourage diversity in terms of like hiring practices. Once again, trying to avoid white men from only hiring white men, which is what white men tend to do. They saying now they do this because you have to have a diverse film in order to get nominated for. That's just not true. There's so many all-white movies that still get awards. Like, what are you talking about? Like, they just make stuff up as they go along.
And we just had a film that completely flopped, Moana, the live action remake that was touting how authentic it was to that culture. Well, that's just a fantasy. Why does it matter? And my argument is, if it doesn't matter, then why change it? It's the motivation behind the change that people sense. And it also is a...
Moana has a Polynesian cast, because name 3 movies about Polynesia. No, better than that. Name 2 movies, and Moana can't be one of them, about Polynesia. Okay? You're going to struggle. All right? So why would you, and this is what these people do, why would you decry or complain or even mention Moana? Yeah, a movie where for once in history, a group of people who are very underrepresented in media actually have some kind of expression, and a movie that's been a hit globally. Because you're a white man and you just have to complain like, oh, well, we left Moana alone, so why are you leaving our properties? It's like, haven't you got enough white male movies? Like, haven't you got enough to not complain when a movie is diverse? Why are you trying to grift and to LARP as a Greek? You're not Greek. You never will be Greek. Okay? Your ancestors will never be related to the ancient Greeks. You carry none of that ancestry. You likely erased the ancestry that existed, the remaining ancestry of those people, that because your people spread like a bit of, a plague across the earth, wiping out everything they came into contact with, including the great civilizations which you now call your own because you happen to inhabit their lands. That's the reality of the situation. Yeah, that's the reality of the situation. They didn't like your people for the exact reason of what you're doing right now in the world. That's just the reality. Okay, they didn't like your people. Stop LARPing like this is your, like, it's got nothing to do with you. These
a red flag for how we're going to treat the source material and how we're going to go through. Like, I saw this with the Rings of Power. The Rings of Power, they changed, they had black dwarves, and
he's now talking about Lord of the Rings. So he's talking about accuracy, and he's now talking about Lord of the Rings. He's complaining about, oh, I saw this with the Rings of Power. Yeah, of course you did, because you're an idiot. I'm sure you've seen it with the new Game of Thrones, House of the Dragon. I bet you were livid that they made the Valerians black. It's like, God, get a flipping life. It's fantasy, mate. I know you guys live, and this is the thing, they live in fantasy world. So this is why they have no separation between fantasy and reality, because their entire history is a fantasy. So when your entire history is a fantasy that you've grafted onto, yeah, you've grafted yourself and you've grafted your lineage into a fantasy history, then Odysseus stops becoming a fictional character and becomes an ancestor. That's what it is. These people think Odysseus is their ancestor. Oh, they're turning our pink ancestor into a they're turning our Helen of Troy. Oh, we're of the Hellenic lineage. We come from the blood of Helen. No, you don't. Yeah, we separate fantasy from reality. What the hell is wrong with these people, man? Seriously.
black elves, and oh, by the way, they completely went off the text. So it's a red flag for something else. Now, Lupita Nyong'o, if I'm mispronouncing her name, I apologize, but if she's in it for a little bit, like, the movie could still.
By the way, there's no way that this guy would apologize for pronouncing her name wrong. If you see, I'm not gonna send anybody to this idiot's channel, but if you see his channel, it's not even, it's not even worth going to. You'll be offended just from the thumbnails alone.
It'll be good. It can absolutely still be good, but it's a red flag and it's subversive casting. So it does rile people up. It's meant to rile people up, just like the casting of black.
It riles up white men who want to be everything. Just like any time they see a person of color, anytime they see a black person, they get riled up because they want the fiction that they have been portraying, or at least given to the world as fact, that they have been spewing through the media and through our educational system as being fact, the false depictions and reconstructions of all of these people being white. By the way, I did mention this in my academy in one of our live streams recently, and this is why they push the entire myth of the white race shrinking. They push this myth to the world. Oh, the white race, we're disappearing. White people are disappearing. I was like, no, you're not. White people are more numerous than they've ever been historically. Okay. But they have to push the myth that they're disappearing, because what people see when they open up history books is white people everywhere. It's like, oh, there are white people everywhere. Look, there are white people in America, and white people in Greece, and white people in North Africa, and white people in Asia. And wait, white people used to be everywhere. No, there weren't. Okay, all of these people come from a very tiny population. This is proven genetically. There's no argument to be had here. Okay, a very tiny population that started expanding 3,000 years ago. In other words, they started expanding when ancient Greece already existed. They started expanding when the Aegean civilizations already existed. They are a tiny population of people. And if you compare their numbers and their prevalence around the world to 200 years ago, let's put a little hallmark. Let's say the year 1600. In the year 1600, all people who looked like this were pretty much restricted to Europe. There were none but maybe a small sprinkling in North America just arriving as pilgrims. There were pretty much zero in South America. There were a sprinkling arriving in Southern African Cape. Okay. There were none throughout Polynesia and Oceania. And there were a few, but not very many in Asia. Yeah, maybe towards kind of like the Stans and, you know, up in the Russian steppes, you had a few kind of over there. That's not a lot. Compare that to now. They are now almost like basically almost 100% of the European population. They are a vast majority in North America. They are a majority in South America. They are relatively numerous in Southern Africa, but obviously not to a massive degree. They are hugely numerous in North Africa. They are the majority in Oceania and Australasia. So, and they are probably rivaling Asians. Well, actually, no, they're not. They're a minority in Asia, but they're still far more numerous than they were in the 1600s. So this is a population that has grown exponentially, easily more than any other population on the planet. Their numbers have been really good. Okay, their numbers have done them well, guys. Don't let these guys fool you into thinking that they're a shrinking population. Okay, they are everywhere. Yeah, they're everywhere all over the planet, and they weren't a few hundred years ago. A few hundred years ago, they were a drastic minority on this planet, and they're now in across at least 1, 2, 3, perhaps 4 continents. They are now the majority. Let that sink in. So numbers only mean as much as numbers mean, but in 3, perhaps 4 continents, they are now the majority. This is not a shrinking population. They are selling that lie to people because they want you to believe that they were always numerous everywhere, and they weren't. Just a little bit of common sense will bring you to the same conclusion.
Black Snake.
Okay, Victor, let me bring you back in here, if I may.
Yes.
What's your response to that argument?
I think he makes a good point.
Interestingly, Joy says they're down to in GA, they're down to 50% of the population. My question to you is, are you sure that's down? Are you sure that's down? And I know you think it's down because historically I tell you it's down, but I'm telling you right now, the post quote unquote slave trade numbers might not be what you think they are. I actually think that Black people were a majority. They've pushed those numbers down. In fact, I remember reading that after the slave trade, Black people outnumbered white people on the American continent. I think it was 4 to 1 or 5 to 1. And now obviously, you know, you're 13%. And I think the new narrative now is that they were 30% of the population after the slave trade. That's a recent revision. That's changed considerably to what I learned, you know, a couple of decades ago. So I just think they lie about numbers in general. I think they lie about numbers in general. And yes, they say birth rates are dropping, but you have to also multiply that by their population across the planet. You know, they are incredibly numerous and incredibly prevalent.
About subversive, when we talk about people of different races playing characters, the complaint about Hollywood, say pre-1980, was that white characters, Burt Lancaster, Charles Bronson, Audrey Hepburn, who played Native Americans, the issue was there were probably Native American actors who would have been more authentic. I don't know if they were as good actors, but there was no effort. But the point I'm making is they tried to look or appear as they were Native Americans. So when a Mexican American actor played.
This is hilarious. So this guy is talking about the fact that, well, you know, at least they tried. So he's basically talking about blackface, or in this case, red facing. Yeah. White America, it's like they used to do, yeah, back in the offensive days of the spaghetti western, where they used to just like slap red paint on themselves and go and pretend that they were Indians. Yeah, he's talking about that like that's a good thing. Well, at least they tried, you know, to be all friendly like the Indians. You know, they tried to be like the red Indian. You know, they really honored the traditions of Chief Smokes Too Much, and you know, we definitely guy, man, like, mate, respectfully, yeah, there's nothing honorable about red facing. Yeah, there's nothing honorable about black facing. Yeah, there's nothing honorable about what you did back then. Yeah, maybe you should just not have made movies about the people whose land you inherited and were invaded and slaughtered. Yeah, maybe that's what we should have started with, not actually making movies about the people who you have disenfranchised, displaced, and slaughtered. That's probably where you should have started. Instead, you're gonna give yourself a pat on the back. Oh, well, you know, we made the effort. So, you know, if Lupita's gonna play Helen of Troy, what we'd like to see is her put a bit of white chalk on her face and a blonde wig, so that people are just flipping idiots, man. Seriously.
Absorb the Greek. Anthony Quinn tried to look Greek, and it was enhanced because he looked Greek in some ways. When Laurence Olivier tried to play Othello, he was white, but he tried to look like he was North African. And this is
oh Lord. Yeah, this is happening, guys. This guy's actually really saying this, you know. He's praising the era of blackface. Yeah, he's praising it. You know, he tried when he played Othello, he tried to look, you know, North African. Well, Othello wasn't a North African, first of all. He was a Moor. Okay, he wasn't a descendant of North Africans. He was a Moor. Okay, he was black. So that's your first mistake there. Yeah, I think Shakespeare called him an old. Well, that's what Iago called him, an old black ram. He didn't say an old Arab ram. He didn't say an old brown ram. He said an old black ram is topping your white ewe. That's what he said to what's her face? What was the female protagonist's name in the fella? I can't even remember. But that's what he said to her dad. Yeah, there was no kind of like uncertainty in the language used to describe a fellow. So let's not try and revise who he was historically, please. Thank you very much.
But I think the other guest was right about trying to be subversive. In the case of Lupita, I mean, it would be kind of absurd in modern sense of.
This guy reminds me of Simon Webb. So I just had to throw that out there. These kind of like old white racists that pretend that they're kind of like neutral historians, but really they're just carrying that strong, racially biased, anti-black sentiment, but without actually saying it. You know, that's what he reminds me of. Thank you, Jeffrey. Desdemona. Damn, it's been a long time since I indulged in Othello. I do think that's a very, very good story, by the way.
Abilities to have an African American actress or African British actress, then where I guess we could use that word whiteface, so she would appear more authentic as far as the actual text of Homer goes.
Yeah, there's no text that says that Helen was white. Thank you very much. So nice try, but she wouldn't need to whiteface to depict Helen. Okay, the only thing she'd need to do is look somewhat semi-godly, because that's really the only description you get of her. As far as race goes, no, she definitely wasn't. But there's no description of her being white or black. She was just beautiful. That's as far as the description goes, and that was probably left open by the Homeric authors because it was entirely unimportant. Now, they did think that Odysseus's race was important because they mentioned that quite overtly, but you guys can really ignore that. And Lucolenos, white arm, doesn't mean white, because I don't think Luca even means white. It just means, it's just a word that's used specifically, like I've already said on several live streams, to describe women. okay, as people who were untouched by the elements, so to speak. That's what white armed meant. And I've already explained Leuco Ethiops was used to describe a group of West Africans contemporaneously. So unless you're going to tell me there was a group of white, blonde people living in modern day Senegal across the equator, then I suggest you shut your stupid mouths. Let me give a quick shout out to Kelnari. A fellow was Samuel Jackson in Europe. Samuel L. Jackson, or I think you're just you're joking there. So I can't always tell if people are making jokes or actually giving me some history to read up, because you guys are really good at that. So shout out to you. Thank you very much for your $10 anyway. Appreciate it very much.
But it is a subversive act. It's saying that we're going to take somebody who does not appear anywhere near the look of Helen, and why it might have been less subversive for Clytemnestra or other characters. After all, Helen is a...
Just a quick shout out to Stephen Carter here, who says that's exactly who Victor David Hansen. I don't know who this guy is. I have no background he is, but I picked up on that straight away. It's those little subtle dishonesties that he's putting out. It's the half truths that he's telling. It's the attempt to make things sound so conclusive, which have a question. And for someone who should be well read, he knows for a fact that Helen's race is not described, but the fact that he's leaning and wanting to, you know, augment those descriptive idiomic terms to be racial. I already know that you're a white nationalist. It's very, very clear. So I appreciate that for confirming that, Stephen Carter, because I suspected that much. Let's carry on.
Central character and caused the Trojan War. I have no problem, as the other guest said, about being subversive, if that's openly your point, is to draw attention that you're trying to destroy characterization or traditional stereotypes, but it's not being authentic to what the author imagined.
Okay,
it might be your...
How do you know what the author imagined? And once again, why are you only choosing to look at the terms for people who you believed, you know, like, once again, no one's answered. Have you noticed that, guys? No one's revisited the whole what about Matt Damon argument, which really we could sit down and say, who was the worst casting racially? Who was the worst casting? Was it Matt Damon or was it Lupita Nyong'o? I will take that argument up with anyone who wants to have that. Anyone who wants to have a debate, I will debate strongly that Matt Damon was a worse casting decision than Lupita Nyong'o, given the information that we have. And I will be able to support it using the text. But notice how none of them are doing that. They're just, I'm white and I say so. Well, what they're doing is they're drifting away from the what Homer imagined. You know, Homer, by the way, who we don't know the name of the person who wrote these things, but what Homer imagined was, you know, he had a white utopia, and they're dragging in these colored people and these darkies who are just ruining the entire aesthetic, and you know, you can't get into the story because they're making everybody... Get over yourselves, man. These people are just they're not for real, man. Seriously.
Your interpretation of what he imagined, but if it isn't. And again, I think, just to finish, we have a whole tradition of, it is kind of insulting to, I know it's very unpopular. There's a lot of controversy in Greece. It would be as if you made, an epic, remade How the West Was Won, and you didn't have one American actor in it. You all had Europeans or Africans or Asians. So to make this national epic, which the Greek people feel is a continuous tradition from the 7th, 8th century, and not have a single Greek actress or
8th century BC, yeah, to be clear. Homer's works, not 8th century. So that's a lot longer. That's 1600 years longer than what he's just proposed then, and also far too long to suggest that, you know, this idea of a continuous Greek, you know, lineage, it's not even supported historically. Okay, we know that the population is entirely different to the actual ancient Grecian population. We know that. So, you know, they can take ownership of it as well. It's like, you know, people occupy lands, okay, and then they say, oh, we are, you know, there's been no change, we are the same people. It's like, okay, fine, you can say that, but it doesn't make it historically correct, you know.
Actor is kind of jarring when you go out of your way to get other people who would cause controversy, and sometimes in a subversive manner.
Right. Well,
Though I agree with the broad statement there, was that if they were going to make an epic kind of like, you know, American drama about, you know, about some historical, you know, like, you know, the Civil War or something like that, and they didn't cast a single American actor, that would be a problem. But one of the things that people also need to understand when it comes to this is Hollywood is an American machine. Okay? Hollywood is an American machine. Yeah. And as an American machine, they're going to prioritize casting American actors in all of their movies. Okay? That's just one of the facts of the matter that people need to really understand. My argument would be, if Greek people really do have a problem with this, then put your money together, get your funding up, and make your own Odyssey movie. Why would you rely on the Hollywood machine and a British director to deliver your story in a way that you like? A lot of people do these kind of like inane complaints. Oh, you should have done this, should have done that. White men crying. Oh, it's like, do your own thing. This is like, these people are, a filmmaker is no different than an author. They don't owe you an explanation as to how they've decided to cast the movie and do all this. They don't, there's nothing they owe you. This isn't some publicly funded enterprise. Yeah, that democratically you have a say in how these things are delivered. You have no say. You're not funding them. You have no money. So they cast what they think is talent. They cast what's accessible. They cast what's around them. And the fact that they even include, you know, other people, they probably do that because it pays well to do that. You know, and that's just how it is. It's like when people all, you know, it reminds me of when they, you know, the Egyptians are going, oh, they didn't cast a single Egyptian. Well, we'll make a movie then. You guys are making billions of pounds, yeah, grifting off the ancient Egyptian civilization. Yeah, you put £2 billion or whatever, over £1 billion into the building of the Grand Egyptian Museum. Yeah, I'm sure you can spare a couple tens of millions and make your own, you know, ancient Egyptian epic and see if anyone will come to watch it. Go ahead, and then you can cast all the Egyptians you like. You know.
I was actually in Greece, coincidentally. I'm going to bring Daniel back in here. I was actually in Greece a few days last week, coincidentally, and I had this anger expressed because there are no Greeks in this movie. An open letter in the Greek City Times said, Greek people did not disappear after the age of myth. Greek culture was not frozen in classical marble. Greek language was not extinguished in antiquity. We are still here. Now, if you go back in time, this is not the first time you've had a black actress play Helen of Troy. Orson Welles.
Wait a second. Wait a second. How did he quickly link from, yeah, Greek people complaining about the fact that they're being still there and being ignored by Hollywood, as they have been in every single Hellenic Hollywood epic that's been made, including Troy, yeah, Greek people being entirely ignored as a you know, a nationality of people, to move into complaining about Lupita Nyong'o. They weren't complaining about Lupita Nyong'o, they were complaining about Hollywood, yeah, casting white British descended people for most of the roles, and for Britifying the ancient Greek civilization, for Britifying the language, for making it Western when it has nothing to do with the West. They were a Mediterranean civilization. They classified themselves as the other reading, writing, and speaking people around them, who were predominantly concentrated in Asia, Africa, and the Aegean. That's where they were. There weren't no people above them who were reading, writing, trading, or involved. There were just barbarians north of them. They were aware of that. Their neighbors were aware of that. Everybody was aware of that. So how did he make that, the fact that Greek people are complaining, which I'm sure they have every right to, about this, once again, them projected, you know, oh, you know, the Greek people must just be so sick of black people being cast as Greeks. No, they're sick of you, yeah? They're sick of you being cast as Greeks. That's what they're sick of. All right. The Lupita thing is kind of like, yeah, that's there. They're gonna complain. I'm not saying they're okay with Lupita. They're probably irritated, but I think they're also irritated about Matt Damon. Yeah, they're sick of seeing you guys. Like, what the heck, man? Well, joke, man. Let me give a quick shout out to a couple of donations that have come through. Shout out. RJ, how you doing? He said, hi, King. Even movies set in African soil, you find these people at the center. Does the Tarzan movie? Yeah, exactly. Tarzan, you know, the very capable boy raised in the jungle, white boy raised in the jungle. But, you know, the Lion King. Well, the Lion King, I think they did have some black voice actors. But they also had some whites, and yeah, they mixed it up. They mixed up a little bit. They've blackified it more and more. I know, obviously, the monkey was definitely black. They definitely cast the black monkey in the Lion King, that's for sure. But I also think his mum, if I remember correctly, Sarabi, I think that was a black actress who voiced her. I could be incorrect, but yeah. And obviously, then they had the guy from James Earl Jones, isn't it? He voiced Mufasa. So there's a few black actors, but the point is that, yeah, I get your point. That's the point. Like they have no problem inserting themselves in these stories. You know, the parrot. I think the parrot's name was Iago. No, Iago was the parrot in Aladdin. What was the parrot's name, or the hornbill's name in Zazu? Zazu was definitely a white person. So, you know, there you go. Macy said it's an inferiority complex of people with no history inserting themselves where they have no business being. Exactly. But they've been doing it so long, they like to gaslight black people with that accusation. Oh, you guys have no history. It's like, no, guys. Try again. We're very aware of what our history is. We know where we were and where we weren't. Okay, I think it's you guys who have been, you know, fooling yourselves for the longest time, trying to, you know, graft yourself onto the history of people and places that you just don't belong in. So, you know, don't kill a killer, my friend.
Cast Eartha Kitt as his Helena Troy back in 1950, something I didn't discover until this morning. So
I'm surprised he included this, and I'm glad he did. Let's hear what their response is to this.
There is precedent for this, Daniel. It's been done. There wasn't the outcry then, there is now. But if I'm Greek, I'm probably...
So they were okay with it in the height, yeah? Bear in mind, that would have been pre-segregation. Yeah, pre-segregation, yeah? And probably, you know, a pretty intense period of Jim Crow, yeah? When that casting took place. Let's hear what their response is to that. The fact that they're more outraged than a time in America's history that Americans are embarrassed to look back about.
Looking at this going, yeah, I would take the view that Victor just articulated, which is, seriously, you're not going to have a single Greek actor in the Odyssey?
You see how he conflated that? Like, ask one question, make the point about the Greeks, and then get some feedback from them. Then make your point about Lupita and Eartha Kitt, but don't make like the Greeks. What he's doing here is conflating deliberately so that he can say the Greek people are sick of seeing black people cast as them. This is so disingenuous and Piers Morgan. It's disgusting me, seriously.
I mean, first of all, I think it has to be said that all of this is a sort of a tempest in a teacup, because as anyone who has read the Odyssey knows, Helen has the tiniest imaginable role in the Odyssey. And I have seen the film, and I think it's
first sensible thing I've heard from this panel of whingers.
Fair to say that she's on screen for maybe 45 seconds, literally. So that's one thing. I mean, it really seems to be silly to getting everyone's knickers in a twist about a very minor.
And by the way, it's not everyone, it's you, yeah? You white men, yeah? Not everyone. You're the ones who created the tempest in the teacup. You're the one now acting like a bunch of handbags, yeah? The very thing you like to decry, once again, the very behaviors you like to decry in women, the very behaviors you like to, you claim that black people are always whinging and whining about things. Oh, victim mentality. You know, you say anything accurate about history and you're guaranteed to get one of these bozos typing, oh, here comes the victim mentality. I'm sorry, there's only one group of people who right now are displaying global victim mentality whilst inflicting misery upon the world. It's one demographic of people, one tiny demographic of people are literally inflicting misery on every single continent in this world whilst calling everybody else, oh, victim mentality, victim mentality, while they're stabbing you in the back, literally. Oh, don't have any victim mentality. Oh, why are you complaining about being stabbed? Oh, victims, always the victims, aren't you? Oh, freaking psychopaths, man.
Character. Is he trying to be provocative? Yeah, absolutely. I would say that, of course, you're not going to cast a Black person as Abraham Lincoln because these are historical documents.
Ease up there, yeah. This once again, Mr. Whitewash, chill out. Anyway, let's carry on.
And we know, we have a sense of what historical characters look like. We have documentary proof. This is a fantasy epic, right? We're all used by now to seeing all kinds of actors of every imaginable extraction on the stage, in movies, operas, playing kinds of people that were, roles that were written originally for white people.
Okay, so now he's saying something semi-logical and normal. I hope he's not going to argue that the roles of the Odyssey were written for, once again, white people, because that will show an astounding amount of historical illiteracy for people who have claimed they've read the work. But let's see where he lands with this.
It really doesn't matter to me. I think the real question to be asking about this movie, and I don't know who else among my fellow guests here has seen it. I saw it earlier this Monday, last Monday, is forget about the details. Everyone's hysterical that the ship isn't accurate, the armor isn't accurate, the costumes aren't.
Ship isn't accurate, armor isn't accurate. Was the Cyclops accurate? Just for the historians out there, did the Cyclops, did the 40-foot, maybe even more, probably more than 40-foot, did the 100-foot Cyclops match the skeleton of the Cyclops that they found in Mykonos? Yeah, everyone knows about the 100-foot Cyclops skeleton they found in Mykonos. Did that match? Just want to make sure that matched. Did the giants, the mecha giants on the island who's had the skin of armor, did that match the remains that anthropologists found, yeah, on that island in Turkey of these mecha giants from 1000 BC? Did those match? Yeah, just making sure that the historical accuracy is correct here. Yeah, did the egg of Helen match when they found the eggshell of the human that was born? Yeah. Thank you. Someone just said that as well. The real G just said that. When they found the eggshell of Helen's actual eggshell that they found, yeah, in a cave in Libya, yeah, which did they do it? Did they paint that the right color, guys? Because we have to get these historically, these actual things that took place, these historical document, which someone in the chat has called it a historical document. We have to get this historical document correctly. Yeah, did the storm, yeah, that was sent to the ship by Poseidon, yeah, the godly storm, yeah, did that match the real history of what actually took place? Yeah. What are we talking about here, man? These people are absolutely ridiculous. It's like they want let me carry on.
Accurate. They speak with American accents because, as everyone knows, the ancient Greeks and Romans spoke with British accents, blah, 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 blah. Okay. The real
I made that point. So yeah, so far he's doing okay. Let's see.
Question I think we should be focused on here is, does this film convey the spirit of the original? That's the question to ask in a.
But who are you to say what the spirit of the original is? You're talking about the spirit written by or translated by misogynists and exaggerated by people like you, once again, because we've already spoken about the fact that you ignore the fact that Odysseus is described as black-skinned. You ignore that. You can moan about it, whinge about it, try and reclassify or change the etymology of terms all you want, but you're not going to avoid the fact that Odysseus was described as black-skinned. You're not going to avoid the fact that Homer regarded Zeus as an Ethiopian. You're not going to avoid the fact that Homer wrote a book dedicated to the Ethiopians that unfortunately we no longer have the text. You're not going to avoid the fact that Zeus, the father of Helen, visited Ethiopia. You're not going to avoid the fact that the ancient Greeks inherited their gods from Kemet. You're not going to avoid the fact that all of these gods were regarded, particularly Heracles, Zeus, and several others, as black. You're not going to avoid those facts. So when you turn around and you say, oh, the spirit, exactly what spirit are you talking about here? Are you talking about the whitewash spirit? So yes, you are correct. It doesn't invoke the fully, I mean, it's still whitewash. Just everyone's still okay with someone who was described as black-skinned being a pink man. Everyone's still okay with that. Yeah, just being clear, everyone is still okay with that.
In a large sense.
I would say, like, well, where does it stop if you start saying, well, the armor's not accurate, the ships aren't accurate, the casting's not accurate, the accents are not accurate, the dialogue's not accurate? Well, like, what do you have left? Like, how far are you going to go with this?
Well, also,
I don't think that's about. No, I think absolutely you can get the thrust of the story across, its main themes. I don't think these incidentals actually matter that much. If it presents Odysseus as the kind of hero he is in the original, if it gets across the crucial themes, homecoming, the meaning of home, the allure of adventure, competing with the desire for the stability of home, all of that stuff, then I'll be happy.
So I'm going to say it does all of that apart from the last point. It definitely does all of that. I think they make Odysseus, being someone who watched the movie once again, they make him seem very heroic and noble, even when he's doing ignoble acts. And they definitely convey the story of his kind of trials throughout, his integrity as a human. I think the one thing that they kind of don't portray is the fact that he has this kind of like lust for adventure. I think you're more wrapped up in his desperation to get home and his actually not wanting to go on an adventure to begin with, kind of being forced into it by Agamemnon. So I think there's a little bit of that's not being conveyed that well. But the other things he said, yes. And once he just said, as he just said there, they'll see this and they'll find a new thing to complain about, or they'll just focus in on the fact that they couldn't enjoy the movie because Lupita Nyong'o ruined it for them because she's black. That's what they'll, that's what they'll do.
Okay, I mean,
let me bring in. I want to bring in Mark Lamont Hill here because of something Critical Drinker, whose video on the Odyssey has had over 5 million views, and Critical Drinker says 3 million.
Just 3.
Oh, I'm sorry, you've been promoted.
Hit 5.
You've been promoted. It's been promoted.
And this is why he does it. When you can get so many views complaining about stuff that doesn't need to be complained about, and it pays you that well, wouldn't you continue it? Of course you would. If you've got no integrity, of course you would. He's found a suitable grift. He's found a suitable grift that pays out really well. And here's a sad thing, actually. I never mentioned this. I used to be a Critical Drinker watcher. I used to find his channel very cathartic when he was just SHITing on Game of Thrones, which was a show that I loved, but descended rapidly in season 7 and 8 into something that was really crap and unrecognizable. And he used to do really good movies, crapping on it. And I was like, hey, this dude's quite funny. I found it cathartic to listen to people, basically saying the stuff that I felt about, shows that I thought could be better. And then he did take a turn, and it's like all of these people, he didn't start out this way. He chose this path because when his views started to fall on his content, because the outrage on the shows that everyone hated, like Game of Thrones, kind of like, okay, we get it now, everyone hates Game of Thrones, move on. He realized, hey, the only other way I can stoke this kind of interest is by rage baiting racists, which works really well. Like I said, that is a high paying job, guys. Yeah, rage baiting racist people is really high paying. It's really easy, guaranteed views. And both of these guys have exactly the same backstory, because they both started off kind of like doing relatively decent critique, and they just decided we're going to go full on, racist because it works it's so much easier to get views and clicks doing that. And that's why they do it. That's why they do it. They are making money, a lot of money, and getting notoriety. So both of them work.
By one of my team, obviously, he just wants to make you sound even more successful and famous and rich than you already are, which is hard to imagine. So only 3 million views. But in it, you say about it, there's this weird assumption that every other culture, race, and ethnic group in the world are entitled to their own unique stories, history, and identity. And it all has to be carefully fenced off and respected. Whereas anything created by white Europeans is treated like some generic all-you-can-eat buffet that everyone's allowed to stick their hands into.
Guys, can you hear the victim mentality of these people? Can you imagine them saying this with a straight face? And can you see all of them nodding like, yeah, that's exactly it, brother. Do you know these thieving ethnic minority? It's like, what the heck? People are wild. They're saying this with a straight face. We literally just had, in the run up to this, literally just had a talk from one of these guys about how respectful white people were when they were portraying Indians. We respected the Indians. We made sure we put the feathers on correctly, and we practiced our tribal shouts. We actually went and lived with the Indians of the Seminole tribe for a period of at least 3 decades, so that we could master the tribal calls, so that when we did our spaghetti westerns and we shot them indiscriminately, it would be in the most respectful way. These people, who have literally used their media to do whatever the hell they want with history, to trample, to portray themselves as every single, from Persian to Egyptian to every single human being that has walked the planet. These Northern Europeans have cast their image across the world, and then they talk about their history like it's not all you. The first things first, the fact that you think that ancient Greek history is your history is the biggest part of the problem. The fact that you think that Hellenic history is your history is the biggest part of the problem. It's got nothing to do with you. That's part one. Yeah? That's the biggest part of the problem. The next biggest part of the problem is the fact that you have ring-fenced it very effectively. You've made sure historically that only white people are being portrayed doing these various roles. So how freaking very dare you sit down and claim it's the other way around? It's like they are the masters of gaslighting. They have literally no chill. Honestly, you can't make up what these people are saying. Honestly, the way they place themselves, the way they commit a crime and then plant the weapon on the lifeless victim on the floor. They do it with a skill that has been mastered over centuries. I'm telling you. For them to sit there as a panel of white men and go, our stories aren't safe from being sullied by the ethnic minorities, and they're literally taking someone who was described as black-skinned and casting a pink person. Not even a slightly dark-skinned person. Not even a Greek person, a modern dark Greek they could have got. But they got someone who is literally pink to play someone who is described as black-skinned. And they're sitting there with straight faces saying this is unbelievable. Shout out to Macy. She says they have to be extremely racist to make a big deal about someone who had basically a cameo appearance. But also, no one ever claims that Helen looked like everyone else. No one ever claims that. Homer never claims that. So this whole idea is, you had to get a Greek to play her. It's kind of like, first of all, I'm not going to go into what the Greeks look like, and let's ignore the whole Ethiopian contribution and Zeus being Ethiopian and all of these things that are written down and factual and you can't refute. Yeah, let's ignore the fact that the Greek pantheon are a bunch of black people, according to the ancient Greeks. Let's ignore that. Yeah, and let's just go on the mainstream narrative. There is no point in either of Homer's tales that suggests that Helen looked like everyone else. Helen was born from Zeus, okay, born from an egg. And people talk about, oh, well, her mother was later. That's not in the Homeric works. The Homeric works only mention Zeus as her father. Helen was born from Zeus. Okay, that's all the Homeric novels mention, or the Homeric poems, they only mention Helen being born from Zeus. And the only thing we know about Zeus racially was that he was called Zeus Ethiops, was that her brother was Memnon, the king of Ethiopia. Okay, these are the things we know about her racially. And the only thing that these people are clinging on to is the fact that she's called white-armed. That's the only thing they're clinging on to. And I've spoke about a whole population that are called white in West Africa. So this is why you can't take these people seriously. You can't take their interpretation seriously. They are in denial about the very text they claim to be fighting for. Thank you for the $5 donation, by the way, Macy.
Mark Lamont Hill, your response to that?
I think that feeling is one that every culture and ethnicity and race has. I mean, we have this conversation every year whenever there's a movie about slaves or enslaved people in the United States, and we looked at all the actors aren't black people; they're getting played by Brits, you know. And it's a similar conversation internally within the black community, the African American community in particular, even about Lupita. And so I think that that feeling is common. But I think when it comes,
by the way, this is I'm not going to go on about this, but this is something before the culture wars took off. I actually raised a point, and I raised it to my wife. And I guess it was slightly prophetic in that I probably saw it coming, but I didn't like what I saw as the exclusion of Black Americans from not just Hollywood, but also, you know, production houses like Netflix and Disney Plus. They were deliberately casting Black British deliberately overcasting Black British or anywhere else where they could get Black people to exclude Black Americans from developing their own economy around entertainment, around acting entertainment. I knew historically that was a strategy that they're doing. And it's kind of interesting that now we're at the tail end where we're seeing the effects of that, and it's created this kind of a bit of a divide, and people are sometimes like a bit puzzled that I sit on the side of like, well, I don't necessarily agree with it. I don't think it's a good thing that is happening, as much as I'm a Black British person and I like to see Black people succeed. And actually I know a couple of people in Hollywood. I'm not going to mention any names, but I know a couple of them. I've got a relative who's doing quite well at the moment. I still don't agree with it. That's the bottom line, because I know it's being done in an exclusionary way, but the enemy in this case is the Hollywood machine that is doing it very deliberately. So maybe it's a call for, you know, more of the internal Black American kind of like production houses to raise their game, you know, build up that industry like Spike Lee did, and bring these actors through, because it's like, I think Hollywood is still living off the remnants of the actors that Spike Lee brought through, the Black actors that kind of like the ones who became megastars all came through Spike Lee. But where is that next generation? You know, that's the thing. Where is that next generation to come through? You know?
So European culture, European civilization, I don't see any historical record of that. I mean, the fact that we're still showing the Odyssey, playing the Odyssey, reenacting the Odyssey, rewriting the Odyssey. People make their academic careers just on translations of the Odyssey. We are obsessed with European culture and centering it. And when one film comes out that has an alternate interpretation and a more fantastic, and I mean that in the sense of fantasy, a more fantastic interpretation of it, we act as if, you know, the world is ending. And I don't think we need to do that. I think it's okay to have this type of interpretation. And I think if you were to subject any text or any film to historical scrutiny, if I were to look at any film about the 50s or the 60s, if you look closely enough at the clothes that they're wearing or the music that's playing, there's usually some anachronism there. It just so happens that we're sort of obsessed with this one. And it's finally, in terms of fidelity to the text, most books that are turned into films are not the same as the movie. Go watch The Color Purple. It is absolutely different on screen than what happened in the book. What Spielberg did is very different than what Alice Walker did. That is a normal artistic gesture. And no one is confused about this. And it seems to me that the only people we're worried about, not you guys, but some people are worried about there, is the Lupita one, the small.
Don't say not you guys. Don't give them a pass, Martin Lamont Hill. You're making an excellent point here. Flawless point, don't give these racists a pass. I'm sorry. Don't be too nice to them. There's no point.
Most character in the film. Again, nobody's Greek. Nobody matches ethnically, nationally, etc. Culturally with these characters. But the only one that seems so out of step that we can't stand it is the black one, and that's why Eartha Kitt made sense, probably because she's not as dark as Lupita. So it wasn't as jarring to people. But the idea that the black character has to be the one that we put on the outs of this is silly. None of them fit.
Well,
Okay,
we're talking
let me
about
bring in-
Lupita a lot, but that there's Zendaya, there's Elliot Page, which nobody's brought.
There's Zendaya. So what is he just mentioning? Everybody who's of color, everyone who's a bit of a tan. Like Zendaya, firstly, is mixed race. Now, like Zendaya is mixed race, yeah, and we're talking about a story set in the Aegean, and people who openly classified themselves as sitting between the race, essentially, of Africans and Northern Europeans. That's the self-description of the ancient Greeks. We have portraits of ancient Greeks in the Fayum, and they look like mixed race people. Okay, in spite of how you guys want to reinterpret actual ancient Greek statues, we have portraits of them and they look like mixed race people. And yet he's complaining about Zendaya being in the movie, but once again, he's not complaining about any of the pink people being in the movie, which makes me think that they think that everybody in the Aegean was pink at that time. I don't understand where they get this, why they think this way. I don't understand why, if they're so knowledgeable about the text, they don't understand how the ancient Greeks felt about the people in Northern Europe. Like they didn't hide it. They didn't hide the fact that they despised these people. This was like really regularly spoken about throughout ancient Greek literature. It was never kept a secret. You know, it was never kept a secret. It was really open about it. So I don't understand why they're acting like it's some mystery, you know. No, you just ignore it. You ignore the hatred that the ancient Greeks felt for the barbarians in the north because it's inconvenient to the lie that you're peddling people.
Brought up. I mean,
well, I was actually literally about to ask you about that. So let me just ask you that, Nadronic, because Elliot Page, formerly Ellen Page, so a trans, woman who became a trans man, is in the role of Sinon, a cunning Greek soldier and the cousin of Odysseus, is being billed as another casting controversy, said to be a nod to contemporary LGBTQ, etc. politics. And the memes have been relentless. Let's take a look at some of these.
She, her.
Why would he show the memes? Like, when Piers Morgan wants to be taken seriously, he's showing AI slop. Oh my God, what are we doing here, man? I should have filtered this. This is crazy. He's showing AI slop as a part of his. Oh my God, the memes have been horrible. Like, look what I found on X. Look what I found. Let's look at a retweet from Elon Musk. Like, what are we doing here? Like, why is he showing memes? Like, what's it? He's supposed to be a journalist. Sorry, let's watch this together. Let's just see where this goes.
So that was inevitable, I guess, from the.
Was it even a good? Was it even a good? That was like the sloppiest AI slop. That was like AI slop. That was super slop. Like, what? Didn't even make sense. Look at the guy in the top right. He's like, "What are you doing?" You know, what are you doing? Like, who? Piers, you gotta do better, man. This is some low budget journalism here, man. So let's go.
Online stuff, because that's what the online world does. But I mean, should we care about this? Is it a nod to the LGBTQ culture war, or is it just the fact that Elliot Page is a good actor, got picked for the role, and does a good job?
First of all, Elliot Page acts. I know this already. I think Nolan picks Elliot Page quite often. I know she was in Inception, and I think she's been in another Nolan movie. And her role, or his role, sorry, let me not disrespect, his role in this movie was one of, I keep talking about the fact that as much as I didn't like the movie, the casting was very good. The casting was great. It was perfect. Elliot Page wasn't Achilles, and the person they played was like, you know, once again, not on screen for a long time, but slightly pivotal to certain aspects of the story and really well acted. These people just, how can you moan about something when you've only seen the trailer? Like, this is like, and then turn around and like I said, they call and point fingers at people, call them victim mentality. They're moaning about a trailer. They've been moaning about a trailer for 4 months. 4 months now, they've been moaning about a flipping trailer. These are the most victim mentality people you will ever come across in your life.
I think
I
it's-
don't know. Oh, I'm sorry. Was
No,
that for
that's
me?
Yes, for you to draw it. Yeah.
Okay. I don't know if Elliot's a good actor or not. I think it's you could make an argument that Christopher Nolan likes to work with people he has worked with before, and you can also make an argument that this is absolutely a nod for that. I think it's a little bit of both. I don't know why you bring in a character that wasn't even in the original poem from outside it, and just for this part, and that those are changes that certainly can be made. And again, if Christopher Nolan's name isn't
So I'm just pausing so we can just appreciate this thing sitting here complaining. Let's carry on.
attached to this film, everybody's going to think it's a bomb. But Christopher Nolan being attached to this film, he gets a certain amount of respect that he absolutely deserves, the benefit of the doubt, which he absolutely deserves. I don't know how much Elliot is actually in the film as well. It could be a very small part as far as I know.
So why are you moaning? Why are you moaning? Why are you moaning about something that you haven't seen? Does that sound like a sensible thing that someone who, does that sound like someone who is not insane would do? Moan about something they haven't seen yet on the potential that it might upset them when they actually see it. I haven't seen this thing yet, but I feel like when I see it, it's going to upset me. So I'm going to make 60 videos about it.
And it still could be good, but you can't blame people. The context of this is, yes, there is a culture war. There's always a culture war. And there's one it's an open culture war right now. And we are 10 years deep into it. And we are seeing the same red flags and signs as we have seen with other films, be it historical drama or just known mythological text or just a well-known story, that they are changing to be subversive. And people are now sensing that. That breaks the spell. That breaks authenticity, and it takes you out of the movie when you know what the motivation is. The motivation should be best person for the job, period.
Yeah.
How many friggin' Charlie Kirk talking points can you squeeze into one diatribe? Okay, he keeps talking about breaking the spell. Breaking what spell? And then he says breaking authenticity. So he's already contradicted himself in two statements. On the one hand, yeah, he's talking about the suspension of disbelief and the fact that this is a fiction. Okay, on the other hand, he's talking about it breaks authenticity. Well, it's not authenticity authenticity doesn't have anything to do with the suspension of disbelief. Okay, that's to do with how believable the tale is. Okay, that's to do with how good the acting is. That's to do with how good the dialogue is. That's to do with everything in storytelling. Yeah, you could be telling a story about talking pigs. Okay, that still manages to sustain this disbelief and for you to believe this world actually exists. Okay, he's contradicting himself. He can't even manage that. He's just gish galloping his complaints in this very Charlie, it should go to the best person for the job. Like that usual stupid talking point they make, which is their code for saying if it didn't go to a white man, there's a problem with it. If this job didn't go to a white man, then it was a DEI hire. It was a favor for somebody. I raised this point on my other channel. I'll raise this point for this channel. Yeah. Charlie Kirk, when he made that whole DEI statement, I know this is a bit going off a bit, but I like to give this statistic to people. Charlie Kirk, when he raised that point about, if you get on a plane and a black woman's driving the plane, you're in danger, or black man's driving the plane, you're in danger because, this, I think it was Delta Airlines. Delta Airlines has been doing this DEI drive and they're hiring people who don't have any skill. What Delta Airlines were actually doing was they wanted to change their demographic, their work demographic from 15% women and colored people to 50% women and colored people. And all the white men were like, oh my God, they want to increase it from 15 to 50%. Now, this is a very simple question I then asked my audience. I said, if the workforce is 15% women and ethnic minorities, what is the other 85%? Okay, drum roll. Brrr. That means they had an 85% white male workforce. Is that possible in a meritocracy? Is that possible in a nation that only has 30%, not just white male, because it's women and ethnic minorities added up to a total of 15%, and they knew they had to get that up to 50%. So they realized, hey, like, we are well out of whack here. Yeah, we are well out of whack. How can we have 85% white men as our organization? First of all, it must have been the most insane schlongfest you've ever been around. But secondly, you know, that's not a meritocracy, because the white men don't make up 85% of the graduates. They don't make up 85% of qualified people. They don't make 85% of the top, the top performers. They don't make anywhere near that. In fact, they make about 30% of all of those things, which matches their demographic, which means they should make up 30% of any workforce that is applying meritocracy. If these workforces were applying meritocracy, then you would probably see about 30% white men amongst other groups, but you don't, because they don't operate in meritocracy. They operate in white male favor, which is what these people are so scared of losing. So when they argue against DEI, they're not arguing for equality, they're arguing for white male supremacy and favor. And they are the ones with the victim mentality. They are the ones who want their DEI favors, as in, but they're white male, kind of like, make sure you give the white person the nod if you ever get the choice. That's what they want.
Victor, I mean, take, for example, the ongoing thing about James Bond, right? Who's obviously a fictitious character, British spy. And I've never had a problem when there were rumors that Idris Elba may be the new Bond, of having a black man play James Bond. Because,
oh, thank you, Piers.
I thought fictitious character. Why does that matter? I don't think the racial identity of James Bond is particularly pertinent to.
So he's saying it's a fictitious character right now, but if these guys, which they likely would, James Bond is a staple of English heritage, and they're race swapping him for what purpose? I'm sure, in fact, without even knowing for sure, I am 99% sure that Critical Drinker and Nerd Rodker have both made videos on the subject of Idris Elba perhaps becoming James Bond. I bet you those videos already exist. I bet you.
To the movies. However, I had a big problem when there were rumors circulating it might be a woman. They might change James Bond's sex. So I don't even know if my views are consistent here with any of this debate. But
I think they could be rescued. The issue is twofold. Are these first the anachronisms? Are they within the parameters of the believable? So if you have a ship, does it sort?
Sorry, I have to put this on the screen. James Bond is our ancestor. That's what it all starts saying. The blood of James Bond must not be sullied. They're coming for James Bond. Who next? The Queen? These people are so pathetic. It's hilarious, man.
Sort of look like a trireme, or does it look like a U.S. destroyer to be extreme? So, and the same thing with the characters. Do they approximate the image that you want to convey that this is happening in early Greece? And the same thing, I think, with race. If you have an Ian Fleming's novel and it's very male centric and masculine in the 1950s or 40s sense, and you have a black actor, you can say, well, race is incidental, not essential to who James Bond was, because he's a man of action. But when you bring a woman in, then that's a bridge too far, because it violates the entire ethos or atmosphere of who James Bond is.
There you go. Now, if he just put a full stop there, he'd realize that the entire complaint that these idiots are making is stupid, because what he's just said there just typifies everything. Race is entirely unimportant in the story of the Odyssey. Okay, it's a fantasy tale about gods, about a journey, about challenges, about selfishness, about overcoming, about fearless. It's got so many running themes, and you know what theme never comes up? Race. Race never comes up. But let's see what he says about this.
And I think Daniel made a good point. When the two minor characters are the two sisters, Clytemnestra and Helen, in the Odyssey, they almost have they don't have very many lines at all. So if you want to bring in an African American and work within the boundaries, but if you were to cast her as Penelope, that's a central character, and that would bring attention so that her race would be essentialized rather than incidental to the character of Penelope.
Why? Why would a race be essentialized when race is not mentioned in the Odyssey? This is the issue that we have. These people are making assumptions and they're presenting them to their audience. You know, races are, you know, is essential. Like, no, it's not. It's not even mentioned. It's not even mentioned. And when race is alluded to, it doesn't go in your direction. It's not favorable to white supremacists and Eurocentrists. You just ignore it and then change the meaning of words, like you do with the word swarthy. Well, swarthy means someone had a light tan. Oh, really? More. Oh, more means Muslim. Really? Melas. Oh, Melas means black when we're talking about Ethiopians, but when we're talking about Greek people, it means a tan. It's like, you guys just change words when they're not convenient to you. You're making up history. All you're doing with this outrage, which is beautiful actually for the people on my channel, all you're doing with all of this stupid faux outrage is allowing me to educate everyone and myself in what the ancient Greeks actually said. Because I didn't know how black-centric ancient Greece was. And when I say black-centric, I'm not claiming that the ancient Greeks were all black, but I'm saying, hey, they had a lot of blackness in their pantheon, in their heritage. They looked to Africa for so much more than you guys ever tried to put out to the public. Their admiration of Africa spanned the entire length of the civilization. And actually, many people in ancient Greece were described to look and to bear the phenotype of black people that you've hidden. And all of this whinging and moaning, all it's going to do is going to get the truth out, because it's going to take people like me and others who are doing fantastic work to just surface all of this and be like, hey guys, this is what the ancient Greeks actually said. Yeah. These guys are not going to deal with the fact that Odysseus is described as black-skinned. They're going to ignore it. They're going to pretend it's not there, and they're going to say, oh, well, you know, the race is essentialized because Helen had a xanthus hair and a white arm, then not be honest about what these terms actually mean. But Kay, let them carry on going. They're digging their own grave. I love it. Shout out to Africa for Africans, my absolute G. Salute. Thank you very much, sir, for the $99 donation. It's really appreciated. And I love the support that you give the channel, man. It's much appreciated. Are you in the academy yet? If so, let me know. I hope I haven't missed you, but make sure you join the academy, because we will connect very, very deeply. By the way, that's a shout out to everyone. I'm not being exclusivist here. If you want to connect more deeply with the channel, more deeply with the research, tomorrow I am doing part 2 of a series I started yesterday, which I can't give you the title to because it actually is that controversial, but it's very groundbreaking research. I did part 1 last Sunday. I'm doing part 2 tomorrow. Some very groundbreaking research about our presence in the Middle East. I can't deliver it to the main channel because, like I said, it's very early research phase, and I don't like to deliver stuff that essentially people will just ridicule by default before they've allowed the research to settle. So I'm going to find a way of packaging that research before I bring it to the main channel. But yeah, if you like that kind of like, I don't want to say exclusive, but yeah, it is kind of exclusive stuff, please do join the academy. I'll just, if you don't mind, I'm just going to put a link in the chat. Let me just quickly put Africa for Africans donation on the screen as well, because I really appreciate that. Thank you very much, sir. I'm going to put the link in the chat actually whilst we're here, so just bear with me. Where are we? Oh, it'll be here. So thanks for your patience, guys. Let me just put this in quickly. KMEDU.com. So I'm just going to shove that link in the chat. Thank you very much, guys, for your patience. I'm going to pin this. So if you want to join me here, where we really do deep dive amongst other things that we do there, you can request research, lots of different things, and please do join the academy. And obviously you'll be supporting the channel as well. Please do join the academy. Shout out to you, Africa for Africans. Salute to you, and thank you again for your very generous donation. And let me give a shout out to RJ, who has said, these Germanics have so many fantasy stories: Snow White, Hansel and Gretel, Jack and the Beanstalk. Why go to sunny Mediterranean to find fantasy? True. Very, very true. Very true. And they've got so many kind of like, you know, fenced, you know, gate kept and fenced tales that they keep absolutely lily white. This cope is just absolutely ridiculous. Do you know what I mean? This actual cope, you know, they're always playing the victim. Like, I've never seen a group of people so what's the word? They're so like infinitely dominant and powerful in terms of the world. Like, even the people they're complaining against are themselves. These white men here are complaining about a film directed by a white man, funded by a white man, that exists within a white power infrastructure that's marketed by white people. Like, there's no black people in a position of power, and yet in the midst of all that, they've managed to find a black woman who simply took a job and made her the villain. Do you see that? They've taken the black woman who said, I'll have that job, thanks very much, that will go well. She did her auditions and she obviously performed the job very well, and they was like, yeah, she's the villain now. Let's ignore all of the white men who are literally making this happen. Yeah, because we want to make this about the woke monster, the woke ghost. Yeah, we want to make this about an individual woke ghost, you know, the black Trump, the black female Trump, the trumpet. There's a black woman called, you know, Donala Trumpet, who from behind the scenes, yeah, with her group of powerful people, is orchestrating the downfall of white men, and she uses white men to do that. That's what's happening. And white men have every right to be petrified and terrified, because Donala Trumpet, if she has her way, will destroy every single staple of, you know, white existence, all of those things that makes white so white. And she's going to use powerful white, rich white men to bring down the white empire. That's what's happening in the world of white nationalism. Yeah. Enjoy it, guys.
And I think what he's doing is, and I haven't seen the movie, but I think he's working around the periphery. He's using trans actors or black actors in roles that you're usually not accustomed to see them in, but not tampering with the essential Odysseus. This argument would be raging if Odysseus was black or Asian, as it would be with other, you know, works. If you had a Martin Luther King novel and the person was white, that would be jarring. It would even if it was.
It's the Martin Luther King. We knew it was coming. The Martin Luther King novel. Or the Martin Luther King literally was someone who was fighting for racial supremacy, racial equality. Was Odysseus fighting for white racial equality? Was he? No. Do we know his race? I'm going to argue for your sake. I'm going to say no. And I'm saying that for your sake because we do know his race. Okay. But anyway, let's pretend we don't know his race, or at least we don't know what his complexion was. We're going to argue, did he fight for any of those things? Was race ever mentioned? No.
Was a fiction,
Victims.
nobody would want to do that. But if you had an advisor who was black and you changed that advisor to a white person for ecumenicalism or diversity, nobody would really object.
Right.
So the question I have is he doing this because these are great actors and they will enhance even these minor roles?
Yes, is the answer to the question. Lupita Nyong'o is a massive actress in terms of her star appeal. She's very favored as being an excellent actress. She's performed as beautiful people and incredibly disheveled people. She's taken every single role that she's had and she's embodied the character in the world. I mean, like, it's not like I think she's the greatest actress ever, yeah, but I don't think anyone's ever complained that she's ruined a role or not carried a role well. She's always performed very well in the roles she's done. You could say that about everyone who's in the cast. Okay, Robert Pattinson, Matt Damon, Elliot Page, all of these people who they kind of want to like criticize, like these are all very capable actors. Your complaint is that they haven't done a uniform casting of white men, which makes you weird. But there you go. These people aren't normal.
Or maybe even to stretch it a little bit, is he doing it to open people's sensibilities, or is he just doing it, as has been suggested, to be subversive?
Right.
Or even to please the people who produce the movies and distribute them and award them?
Well, there is another theory, and I'm going to bring this to Daniel because there was a very entertaining spat online on X between the historian Tom Holland and Elon Musk. And it began when Holland posted lots of people telling me The Odyssey is a terrible film on the basis of not having seen it. I've now watched it twice, and it is by some way the best cinematic adaptation of a Greek myth I've ever seen. It honors Homer while simultaneously making something new of him. Now, Elon Musk disagreed, saying Chris Nolan desecrated The Odyssey so that he would be eligible for an Academy Award. Now, he then called Holland a...
Now, to be clear, he's quoting here Elon Musk, who's the person who should be known globally for doing 2 Sieg Heils during a US president's inauguration, something that has never been done, even within the racist history of America itself. In the history of the most R-word nation on the planet, no one has ever been audacious enough to Sieg Heil to no politician or someone of senior standing to Sieg Heil at a president's inauguration or really at any event. Not only did he not get taken to prison on spreading hate, on hate crime, not only did he not get instantly deported, but the entire incident has been wiped from the conglomerate memory of all people globally. We don't speak about it. Elon Musk never did that. And in fact, this moron on the screen, Piers Morgan, went on and said, people who accuse Musk of Sieg Heiling are idiots. That was his exact word. Anyone who accuses him of Sieg Heiling is an idiot. Like literally, like we didn't all see it with our eyes. Our eyes deceived us into thinking that he was Sieg Heiling, which he clearly was. This is the wild thing.
A cuck, which is, we believe, because he got the wrong Tom Holland. He thought it was the actor who plays Spider-Man, who he thinks is in the thrall of his actress girlfriend and now wife, we believe. In response, the actual Tom Holland, the historian, responded, very happy to say it again, The Odyssey is an amazing film, and missing out on seeing it because you think it's woke or whatever is cutting off your, or whatever, is cutting off your nose to spite your face, your loss. So Daniel, you have seen it. Would you concur with Tom Holland?
Well, here in the States, there's a very strict embargo on reviews, so I can't say too much about it. But I do think it does bring across some of the big moments, you know, the moments we know and love, the Cyclops, the incredible shipwrecks, you know, the storms at sea, Scylla, the six-headed dragon that eats his men, and the great whirlpool Charybdis. I will, Piers, I'm going to have to answer your question obliquely by repeating what I said before. I think, and I'm responding to something, Victor, that you were saying, you really, the main criterion has to be the central character, whether he comes across the way that Homer paints him, which is as multifaceted, brilliant, slightly arrogant, violent when he needs to be, but also charming, you know, he's a bit of a James Bond himself, actually, come to think of it. And that to me was the big question. I just filed my own very long review of the movie. But I do think that's the question, actually, that should be raised. But, you know, I'm a fan of Christopher Nolan. When it was announced that he was going to be doing this, I was very enthusiastic, partly because, you know, one of the things about the Odyssey that I think people need to think about in evaluating how this adaptation works is not the details, but, you know, Homer has a very complicated way of telling this story. It does not unfold chronologically. There's incredible looping back in time, stories within stories, conversations within conversation, you know.
I think what we'll do here is wrap up. I just realized we've been going for 3 hours, 20 minutes, and I am feeling tired. It's after 12:30 over here in the UK. So I'm going to call it a day, guys. I hope you've enjoyed that. And I want to give a big shout out to those who made donations. Your donations are very much appreciated. So I'm just going to quickly have a quick run through. A shout out to RJ McKenzie. Shout out to Africa for Africans. A shout out to Macy Graham. I'll just make sure I haven't missed anything there. Shout out to RJ again, and Kelnari, Jonathan, Stephen Carter, One Love Soul, and Dame Dash, who kicked it all off with the donations. I appreciate all of you guys. I hope you've liked it. Please hit up the likes. Yeah, and on the main video, so we can get some more people coming to tune in. And yeah, I'll see you again really soon, because I do want to go back and complete that video that I started, and I figured we could get away with it if we just didn't have the video. So we had the audio but kept the video off screen. So I'm thinking about doing that, and we'll revisit that video about that we were seeing. We were looking at that skull that they found, the African skull that they found in England, in Ipswich. I think that was an interesting video, and I think most people were enjoying it before we had to cut off. So I think we'll finish that live stream. But other than that, guys, have a fantastic weekend. I'll see you all soon. I appreciate you for tuning in. Take care and catch you later. Peace.